From pretty much the present, this is your host, Adam Graham, bringing you a week of old-time radio detective podcasts from 2012. Because these podcasts are many years old, any offers or information included in the podcast may not be valid unless they're currently reflected on our Great Detectives of Old Time Radio website at greatdetectives.net. Here now is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13 at greatdetectives.net. Give us a call, 208-991-4783, and become one of our friends on Facebook. Facebook.com/Radio Detectives. Well, this episode is brought to you by the support of our listeners, and I want to thank everyone who participated in our listener support campaign. Don't have final totals yet, but I want to thank some who've come in since we last recorded the show. So, special thanks to Jerry and to Tasha and Leslie and Francis and Sydney. Thanks so much. And we'll send everyone their gifts that they request in accordance with the listener support campaign terms. Please, if you do want to receive a gift and you gave a qualified donation, email me by this coming Saturday, just so we can have a final total of everything raised minus expenses. All right, well, now it's time for today's episode of Barrie Craig. We had one lost episode, which, between this week's show and last one, which, given the number of lost episodes we've gone through in the past few months, doesn't seem like a whole lot. So here from July the 27th, 1954, it's Death Buys a Bedroom.
William Gargan stars as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
Murderers are human, just like anybody else. Every once in a while, their work begins to tire them. They need a vacation, which isn't too much of a change for them. They kill time instead of people.
The National Broadcasting Company presents William Gargan in another transcribed drama of mystery and adventure with America's #1 detective, Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
Barrie Craig speaking. The office where my license as a confidential investigator hangs is on Madison Avenue. Madison Avenue is in New York City. New York City in the summertime is a good place to go away from. I was going away from it, in the general direction of the Adirondacks and a week's fishing. I rarely catch any fish, which makes two parties to the deal very happy, the fish and me. And I hate fish. I was in the club car looking admiringly at a planter's punch when company came.
Would you have any objections if I sat here?
Well, would anybody object to Santa Claus dropping in?
Thank you. What's your name?
Barrie Craig.
I'm Claire Roberts. What are you drinking?
I haven't started yet. It's almost too pretty to drink. It's a planter's punch.
Looks wonderful. Would you mind?
No. Oh, waiter.
Yes, sir.
One of these for the lady.
A planter's punch, sir, right away.
Where are you going, Barrie?
The Adirondacks.
They're very tall mountains.
Well, I don't intend to climb any. What I had in mind was a small amount of fishing.
Well, that's a wonderful coincidence.
It is?
I'm going fishing, too.
For what?
Fish.
Oh, fine.
Barrie, before the waiter gets back,
Yes?
will you keep this for me?
This?
It's only a small envelope. Please, Barrie.
Well, why do you...
You'll give it back to me when...
Oh.
Your drink, madam.
Thank you.
Will there be anything else, sir?
Not right now.
Thank you, sir.
What did you do with the envelope?
My breast pocket.
You're very sweet. And now let's drink... Oh, but Barrie, why now? Well, you knocked the glass out of my hand.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose accidents will happen.
No accident.
What?
I spotted the waiter dropping something into your drink when he was bringing it.
Oh, no.
Hold it.
A little accident, sir?
That's the way it looks.
I'll get the lady another drink.
Don't bother. The lady isn't thirsty anymore.
Thank you, sir.
Come on, Claire.
I did want that drink.
Even if it was poisoned? I could have been wrong. Maybe all the waiter dumped into the drink was a pinch of nutmeg or something. I didn't think so, though.
I've taken a bedroom. Here it is. Would you like to come in for a bit?
Sure.
You're wondering about me, aren't you, Barrie?
A little.
Was it nice?
It was puzzled.
Oh, you mean the envelope and the drink. I'd like to tell you what's in the envelope, but I don't dare.
Why not?
Because then you might become one of them.
One of who?
One of the people who want me to die.
She didn't go on to explain. There wasn't much conversation after that. She said she was tired. I said goodnight and went on to my bedroom. I've been careless and left the lights on.
But you didn't leave the lights on.
I didn't, huh?
I put them on.
Why?
I'm afraid of the dark, shall we say?
If you like.
Now, Mr. Craig, if it wouldn't trouble you too much, may I have the envelope Miss Roberts gave you?
It would trouble me too much.
I was being polite, but only superficially. The envelope, if you please.
I don't have it.
Mr. Craig, you may be under the impression that this gun I'm pointing at you is merely for display purposes. It isn't. It's a rather deadly weapon. If I must employ it on you, I shall.
Aboard a train filled with people?
Oh, come now, Mr. Craig. Surely you know enough about firearms to recognize a silencer, don't you? The only sound this gun will make when fired would resemble a cough.
I don't have a cold.
You were pleased to make a jest. I have smiled. Now, the envelope.
I haven't got it.
I'm not a child, Mr. Craig. I know Miss Roberts gave it to you.
You must have been snooping.
I would rather have that envelope from you alive, but I am prepared to forego my preferences and take it from you dead.
Well, stick to your preferences. Would you like to search me?
Take your jacket off.
Okay. And toss it to you?
Oh, no. Just drop it at your feet. Thank you. Now move back against the wall.
A careful boy.
An explanation of why, in my profession, I am still alive. Now, your jacket.
No envelope.
No envelope. Mr. Craig.
Yeah?
Where is it?
I don't remember.
Very well. You have exactly 5 minutes in which to remember what you did with that envelope. 5 minutes in which to remember or die.
The gentleman with the silencer on his revolver was a tired-looking man, beautifully dressed right down to the gloves he wore. It occurred to me they'd never find his prints on the gun he was getting ready to use on me. I felt bitter about that. I also began wondering how smart I'd been hiding Claire's envelope in Claire's bedroom.
You haven't very much time left.
I haven't got the envelope either. But before you knock me off, maybe it would be more polite if you mentioned your name.
It's Wiley, if that helps you any.
Wiley. Doesn't help at all. Oh, come right in.
Don't tell.
Sorry.
Mr. Craig?
I'm Craig.
I have a telegram for you.
Fine. You'd better wait. There might be an answer. Mr. Wiley here is leaving anyway.
Yes, of course. Leaving your bedroom, Mr. Craig. Not the train.
Well, let's get at the telegram. Hey, nothing here but a blank sheet of paper.
That's right, Mr. Craig.
Maybe it's right, but it isn't usual.
Well, I thought it would be the best excuse for getting the other gentleman out of here.
Any excuse would have been the best. I don't understand how you come in on this, though.
Miss Roberts sent me.
For what?
The envelope she asked you to hold for her. She would like to have it now.
Of course. Oh, conductor.
Yes?
Oh, what time is it?
Let me see. Yes, 10:50.
Thanks.
Now, if you'll give me the envelope.
That's a nice costume you're wearing.
Costume?
Sure. I've never seen a real conductor wear a wristwatch before. He must have had a glass jaw. He went down and out quietly and quickly. I worried for a couple of seconds. Maybe conductors have started wearing wristwatches. But then I stopped worrying. Because after I went through his pockets, I found out his name was James Bryan. His shoulder holster told me he preferred a .32 caliber revolver with its serial number filed off. And the haircut under the borrowed conductor's cap said that Mr. Bryan had very recently been a guest at a penitentiary. I left the phony conductor in my bedroom and decided to visit Claire Roberts in hers. It was maybe time I found out exactly what was in that envelope. There was a vestibule between the car she had her bedroom in and mine. A vestibule that was occupied by a club car waiter who tried to drug or poison Claire Roberts. A waiter who'd finished with waiting, though. Somebody had buried a knife in his back.
Who is it?
Barrie Craig.
Just a minute. It's pretty late.
I've been keeping in touch with the time.
Has anything happened?
Quite a lot has happened. You better let me in.
Of course.
Thank you.
You still have the envelope?
No.
Barrie.
Don't worry. I know where it is.
Where?
In a safe place. Claire, what's inside that envelope?
I can't tell you. It's not my secret.
I wonder if you realize exactly what kind of a secret it is.
I'm not sure I know what you mean.
It's led, among other things, to an attempt on my life.
Oh, no.
It has also led to imposture. Led me to knock a man down, and finally, very finally, it led to the death of a man.
Which man?
The waiter who tried to gimmick your drink.
But the waiter, but I didn't even know him.
Maybe not, but he knew you.
I can't help that.
You can tell me what's inside the envelope.
I can't. Believe me, Barrie.
Could you tell Mr. Wiley about it? I see you recognize the name.
He's the head of them, the people after the...
The what?
Barrie, he's evil. He's terribly evil.
So's that line. Claire, would it interest you to know that among those aboard this train is the next convict named James Bryan? I didn't catch her as she fell. I let her fall. She hit pretty hard, which told me at least one thing. The feint was genuine. I didn't rush to revive her. There were things to be done first. One of them was to get her suitcase open. I did. Well, there were clothes in it. Maybe I was a cad for intruding on a beautiful girl's privacy. Any thoughts I might have had about that didn't last long. For a girl who was going fishing, Claire Roberts had packed the wrong thing. A couple of silk dresses, sweaters, odds and ends of nylon, and a number of high-heeled shoes. So I shut the suitcase. It would have been fun thinking of how Claire would look in the various clothes she was carrying, but I didn't have time for fun. One thing was pretty obvious. With the clothes she'd brought, whatever she was going fishing for, it wasn't fish.
Barrie?
Yeah?
I must have fainted.
You did. Here, I'll give you a hand up.
Thanks. It was silly, fainting like that.
It was genuine. Who's James Bryan?
I don't know.
Just the mention of his name made you faint.
Well, I meant I don't know what he's doing on this train. He's a gangster, Barrie.
Uh-huh.
He kills people.
In which case, he ought to be in jail. Why isn't he?
Well, he was in jail. Barrie, he must have escaped.
That's not legal.
You're sure he's on this train?
Very sure. He's the gent I knocked out a little while ago.
Where is he?
In my bedroom. You're about to suggest I get a half a dozen conductors together and arrest Bryan?
No.
No.
Well, I mean, well, of course he's an escaped convict and all that, but... Barry, the door. Somebody's opening, Barry.
That light, put it out quick. The shots missed Claire. They missed me. They were, after all, shots in the dark. They did wake a lot of conductors, though. These were genuine conductors. They all carried nice big watches, which made them helpful so far as giving us the right time with it. But beyond that, they didn't have any good ideas, so they left.
Barry.
Yes?
You didn't tell them about the envelope I gave you.
Neither did you.
You didn't tell them about the dead waiter either.
Waste of time. They all came through the vestibule where I'd seen them.
But they didn't mention anything about
Our dead waiter? No. Which means he isn't with us anymore.
Somebody threw him off the train?
Has to be.
Brian?
Well, that's a question Brian could answer better than I think I'll go look him up.
I don't want you to leave me.
There's a conductor on watch outside this bedroom. You'll be safe enough.
Maybe. But will you?
I didn't waste any time thinking up an answer to that question. I couldn't think of a good one anyway. I did hesitate for a minute outside my bedroom door and then decided that he who hesitates is a hesitator. Mr. Bryan, I discovered, had left. Maybe I should have been sorry about that. I wasn't. Time was 20 past midnight. In a few hours, we'd be reaching the Adirondacks and the fishing lakes that Claire was heading for, according to her. I wondered if going to sleep was the smart thing to do. Well, I could brush my teeth anyway, I decided. It's good for your teeth. By the time I got my toothbrush out, though, I changed my mind. I'd packed a blue one. The one I found in my suitcase was yellow. I lifted it to my nose and put it right down again. The bristles had been thoroughly soaked in something I strongly suspected was a deadly poison. Poison that gives off the odor of almonds. Come in. I'm sorry I have to barge in on you so late, but...
Well, that's all right, Mr. Gregg.
As head conductor on this train, you might be able to help.
Anything else happen?
No, but it was intended to. That's not important, though. There's a Mr. Wiley on this train. Could you tell me where he is?
Well, if he's reserved a compartment of the bedroom, yes. Give me a moment.
Sure.
Those shots at you in the late are dreadful.
Well, they're not so bad. They all missed.
Mr. Thomas Wiley has a compartment B in car 437.
Thanks.
Is that all you wanted?
It'll have to do for right now, except, we're on our way to Martindale. Have they had anything exciting happen up there recently?
Martindale? Well, it seems that the postmaster's wife and the grocery clerk...
Oh, I didn't exactly mean along those lines. I meant any crimes, holdups, or...
Oh, I see. Well, yes, there was something. It happened several weeks ago.
Well, what was it?
A payroll robber, it seems to me. A man killed, too, the watchman.
And the criminal?
Well, the police are still looking for them, as far as I know. They worked pretty quick. The reason I remember about it is the train was held up for a couple of hours while the police went through it, looking for the payroll money.
Will they find it?
No, they didn't. They couldn't hold anybody either. There was no proof, you see.
Large payroll?
Well, it's one of the lumber concerns back in the mountains. Pretty large, I'd say.
Too large to get into a small envelope. Huh?
Oh, yes.
Well, thanks a lot.
Well, I've been glad to answer your questions, Mr. Gregg.
I wonder if Mr. Wiley will be. I had plenty to think about while finding compartment B, car 437. By the time I found it, I stopped thinking.
Who's there?
Barrie Craig.
I wasn't really expecting you.
Weren't you? Better take your hand out of that pocket before I come in.
I
There's a conductor in this car. He wouldn't approve of shooting passengers.
Very well. I'll disarm for the moment. There, gun's out of the way. Come in.
Thanks.
Now, to what do I owe this visit?
The fact that I didn't brush my teeth.
You're being obscure.
Blunt.
Someone tampered with your toothbrush?
You did.
You have proof of that?
Enough to satisfy me. Among other things, how did you know it was the toothbrush and not the toothpaste that had been tampered with?
Lucky guess.
Maybe not so lucky. Wiley, did you know that James Bryan is on this train? He is.
I find that of no interest.
You're a liar. Have you seen that waiter recently? The one you bribed to drug Claire Roberts' drink?
You're making quite a number of unfounded assumptions.
No assumptions, not unfounded. Have you?
I don't choose to spend my time with waiters.
Too bad you didn't spend more time with this one.
Oh, why?
You might have talked him out of testifying against you.
You're lying.
You really think so?
I don't know what the waiter may have told you, but whatever it was, it's not true. He's a blackmailer.
That could be. Miss Roberts and I were shot at less than an hour ago.
Well, I've been in this bedroom for the last 2 hours.
Got any witnesses to prove that?
No, you could hardly expect.
True enough. Mr. Wiley, how do you feel about payrolls?
I've no particular feelings about them.
We're reaching Martindale in a few hours. You're getting off there?
Why should I be traveling there otherwise?
For the same reason that Claire Roberts is, or James Bryan is.
And that reason being?
The payoff. I left Mr. Wiley. His conversation lacked frankness. I wandered through the train looking for Mr. Bryan. I didn't think he'd be out in public view. He wasn't. I returned to my bedroom, shaved, and twiddled my thumb. The only result of that was that half hour before arrival, I almost sprained my left thumb.
Barrie.
I was hoping you wouldn't be asleep.
I couldn't. Come in. Barrie, I'm frightened.
You've got reason enough. Someone's tried to drug you and to shoot you.
I know.
You haven't asked me for that envelope again.
I think maybe you better keep it.
Until when?
Where are you going to be staying?
The Green Lake Lodge.
Oh, do you know what the phone number is?
Green Lake 465.
465. I'll phone you after we get in, as soon as I think it's safe, and then we can meet and...
You're sure you'll phone me?
Well, of course I'll want that envelope. After all I've gone through because of it, you...
Okay, then. You'll phone me. Well, looks like we've arrived. On time.
Yes.
I think maybe I'd better get that envelope now.
Get it?
Yeah. I slipped it behind the seat cushion here.
What?
Uh-huh. Untouched.
You hid it here?
Sure. Safest place for it. The last place anyone would think of my hiding it in. After they'd seen you give it to me in the club car.
Barrie, you are clever.
Now, you better leave first. I'll follow after a while. And Claire.
Yes?
Give me a ring sometime, huh? Claire got off the train, and I watched her. Wiley got off immediately after she did. He didn't follow her. Bryan also must have left the train, but he didn't show in the open. However, he didn't follow Claire either. Nobody, it would seem, was interested in where she was going. But when I got into a cab, it was a different proposition.
Mister?
Yeah?
Ain't none of my business, but there's a cab following us.
There is? Yeah, you're right. Matter of fact, it's even more complicated than that.
It is?
Yeah. There's another cab following that one. It added up neatly enough. Wiley was trailing me. Bryan was trailing Wiley. I didn't think the hotel management would care for either of them. Therefore, cabby.
Yep.
Pull over to the curb.
Okay.
Wait for me, huh?
Okay.
Craig?
Craig? Have fun following me?
Oh, look here, Craig.
I suggest you look back.
Back? What? Brian,
Yeah, Brian.
what are you after?
Stop kidding.
You're not the only one who has a gun.
You dirty...
Take it easy, boys. You've got too big an audience for fireworks. 3 cab drivers, me.
Hey, don't bother me. You don't either. Even if I owe you something for that sock on the jaw, but we'll forget it the minute you hand over the envelope.
You can have it.
Now, wait a moment.
You can have it, too, Mr. Wiley. Both of you can have it. One condition, though.
What's that?
That it's opened here and now.
No.
No? No envelope.
Don't be a fool, Brian. He could have opened it at any time if he'd wanted to. We've got nothing to lose.
Well... Okay.
Thanks. This is the envelope given to me by Claire Roberts.
So it would appear.
Yeah, ain't been opened.
Fine. I will now open it. And we discover, to somebody's surprise, maybe, that the envelope was...
Empty.
Right.
Goodbye, gentlemen.
Hey, wait, Greg. How can I be sure you didn't open it before I...
You can be sure because Mr. Wiley is leaving.
Yeah, you must have figured... So long, Greg.
Goodbye. Or maybe only till we meet again. I went on to the hotel, checked in, looked at the lake, and went to sleep. I slept for quite a while. No phone call disturbed me. Towards evening, I got up and performed a couple of errands. One took very little time. The other consisted of crawling under the baggage counter at the railroad station. The baggage clerk understood.
Clerk,
Yes, miss.
will you get my bag for me, please? Here's the check.
Oh, thank you, miss. Get it for you right away.
They ought to build higher counters.
Barrie,
Hello, Claire.
what are you doing here?
Waiting for you to phone me about the envelope.
Oh, I did phone several times. The line was busy.
Funny, because there's no such number.
You still have the envelope?
No, I turned it over to Wiley and Brian.
Oh.
Don't look so hopeful. They opened it right away. The baggage check you just handed the clerk wasn't in it, as Wiley and Brian had thought.
I admit I hoped they'd go after you for the empty envelope.
They did. I'm a fair-sized decoy, Claire, but not made out of wood. I realized the envelope you gave me was empty. I also realized after I had had a look at your suitcase that you weren't coming up here for the fishing. You were carrying the suitcase as a blind. You came here for only one thing.
Here's your bag, miss.
For that.
You know what's in it?
Sure. A payroll, Claire.
Okay, baby, hand it over.
Brian.
You didn't think I was so dumb I couldn't figure you held out on a baggage check?
No, I...
Give me that bag. I already killed a couple of guys for it.
The waiter on the train among them?
I had to make sure Claire didn't pass the baggage check to him. Don't worry, this confession ain't going to do you much good.
It's a large gun you have there.
Large enough to take care of you and the clerk. Now hand over that bag, Claire. Once I was dope enough to pass you the baggage check when the cops was after me. Not anymore.
All right.
I don't think so. My hands are below the level of the counter, Brian. What do you think I was doing while I was waiting for Claire and you to show up?
What?
Practicing this. Funny they never realize that the guns they use on other people can be used on them. Oh, don't go away, Claire. You've got a date. It didn't take the police long to arrive. They took Claire with them, and Brian. Brian wasn't badly hurt. He'd be in perfect health by the time they got around to electrocuting him. As for me, I went back to the lodge. I was a little sorry about Claire. The way it turned out, all I was going to wind up with was fish. The next week's story, For Love of Murder, a jail cell built for two becomes a honeymooner's cottage when a prisoner of love squares a triangle by simply eliminating the competition. Good night, folks. See you next week.
You have been listening to William Gargan in another exciting transcribed mystery drama from the adventures of Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Tonight's story, Death Buys a Bedroom, was written by John Robert. Next week, it's the strange story of For Love of Murder, about which Barrie Craig has this to say.
In next week's story, For Love of Murder, a jail cell built for two becomes a honeymooner's cottage. When a prisoner of love squares a triangle by simply eliminating the competition. Good night, folks. See you next week.
The National Broadcasting Company has just brought you an NBC Radio Network production with William Gargan, starring as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Directed by Arthur Jacobson. Also heard were Betty Lou Gerson as Claire, Byron Kane as the waiter, Jack Moyles as Wiley, Lou Krugman as Brian, and Victor Rodman as the conductor. Eddie King speaking. Here's a word about the daytime listening NBC has in store for you Monday through Friday. It's a refreshing schedule with quiz, music, news, and heartwarming drama. A well-balanced lineup for your summer day. For quiz fun, there's Strike It Rich, the quiz show with a heart, and The Phrase That Pays, a program that can mean prizes for listeners at home as well as the studio audience. For music, there's The Bob Smith Show with plenty of laughs blended in with a melody. The drama is supplied by a series of longtime favorites, programs like Stella Dallas, Young Widder Brown, The Woman in My House, and many more. And for news, NBC is your best bet all through the day for keeping well informed. You'll hear commentators and reports like Alex Dreyer, Pauline Frederick, Morgan Beatty, Ray Henley, and many others who bring you the latest news as it happens and take you behind the scenes for the inside stories. For the very best in daytime radio entertainment, stay with NBC. There's another exciting Dragnet adventure tonight on the NBC Radio Network.
Welcome back. Well, once again, we see that there are few places as dangerous and as exciting in the golden age as a train. So many stories, TV, radio episodes, movies, based on murders on trains. I guess modern mystery writers, if you stick to the modern day, you're missing a key setting for your mysteries. I've seen some mysteries attempt murder on an airplane, but that's a lot harder to hide. As far as mysteries, this was one of the better recent ones. I had a sense that the lady in the case was up to no good, but they did a great job telling the story here. All right, listener comments and feedback. I've received a few requests about this. So after hearing from you, I have gotten the program. It is on Stitcher. I've been asked that a couple times, so now, yes, we are available over on Stitcher. All right, and we also have an iTunes review. David writes, wonderful commentary and truly great old-time radio. Well, I received also a note from Pam, who writes in, please send me the info to make a donation via postal mail. She says, I want to thank you for all your hard work. I found you shortly before my operation for some cancer, and have been delighted to have your program to help me through radiation and chemo. I've finished those now, hopefully for good, but continue to enjoy the programs. Well, I'm glad to hear that you've made it through that and we're able to help. I just thought you should know what a real contribution you made to my quality of life. Anyway, I'm looking forward to making a contribution so I and others can continue to enjoy all the great detectives. And she puts in parentheses, well, some are greater than others. Thanks, Pam. And I think that's pretty much true for every listener. And that's one reason why I like to do the multiple shows. Because I wondered, how we would hold hold an audience, because not everybody's going to like every show, but 5 shows a week, that does it. And I really appreciate your note, Pam, and I appreciate everybody listening and supporting the program. We will be back with you tomorrow, and it's going to be a 1-hour episode. We're going to play, as we enter Poirot on the radio, we're going to begin with an episode of the Campbell's Playhouse, starring the great Orson Welles. You won't want to miss it. Well, today's episode of the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by the support of our listeners, and I want to say thank you quickly to a couple of supporters, to Greg and to Eugene. Thanks so much, and we'll be sending along your thank you gifts when we receive the request on that. Well, today we're pleased to bring you one of the most notable figures in detective fiction, Monsieur Hercule Poirot. Poirot has continued to fascinate people since his 1920 introduction in The Mysterious Affair at Styles, and continuing through novels and through movies such as Albert Finney's Murder on the Orient Express, and then to the television series with David Suchet as Poirot. And by the way, fans of that series can be happy that this year they're actually going to be filming the rest of the Poirot series. So we'll probably see actual adaptations later in 2012 and probably a few heading into 2013. Over the radio, the first attempt to adapt Poirot over American radio came less than 2 decades after his first story was published. The Campbell's Playhouse with Orson Welles was the first venue. In terms of Orson Welles, the Mercury Theater is the name he's most synonymous with. The Campbell's Playhouse was basically Mercury Theater with a sponsor. Mercury Theater productions were sustained by CBS. But after the whole War of the World things, they had no trouble finding a sponsor, so you'll hear some commercials for Campbell's Soup in here. You'll also hear Orson Welles in the role of Poirot, but he also takes on an interesting double role that I'm sure you'll find interesting as well. A little bit of hamminess in the performance by by Welles of Poirot, but still, I think it's an interesting adaptation, and I hope you enjoy it. So for the next 55 minutes, we head out to the Campbell's Playhouse. From November the 12th of 1939, here now is their presentation of The Murder of Roger Akroyd.
The makers of Campbell Soups present The Campbell Playhouse. Orson Welles, producer.
Good evening. This is Orson Welles. Tonight we broadcast our version of what is generally regarded as one of the greatest of the modern mystery murder novels. In some peculiar fashion, it seems to have become necessary to defend the murder mystery as a form of entertainment. Heavy artillery is brought up in its behalf. President Wilson, it is proclaimed loudly, could not go to sleep or could go to sleep, one does not remember the point exactly, until a certain number of conflicting clues had managed to efface the days from his proof, and with a mystery solved only after suspicion has been aimed at every adult in the neighborhood, is not particularly shameful. I have never understood the need for this defense. Murder mysteries are, among other things, our most moral form of entertainment. The wrongdoer is regularly apprehended. If he is not, I have incredibly missed some fascinating black sheep of an author in a flock otherwise startlingly white. And one learns an obvious lesson that to be suspected wrongfully is in due course to be triumphantly cleared of suspicion. Life doesn't always proceed according to this admirable pattern. The apologists would do better to defend life, I sometimes think. To help us solve the mystery of the murder of Roger Akroyd here tonight, we are fortunate in having a very powerful ally, a most distinguished lady and one of your favorite actresses. A lady in whose ears a nation's applause is still ringing for her latest brilliant success in Drums Along the Mohawk, Miss Edna May Oliver. But before we delve into the mysteries of this night's doings, Ernest Chappell has a comment to make on something which appears to be no mystery at all. Mr. Chappell.
Thank you, Orson Welles. I'd like to ask all of you if you'll do this. The next time you're out in the car driving along the highway, Just note the great number of eating places that display as their main invitation to you the words chicken dinners. The reason, of course, is simply that the proprietors of these eating places know by long experience that to nearly all of us, one dish that is a symbol of good eating is chicken. Now, because chicken is a favorite dish with nearly everyone, it's really no mystery at all why Campbell's chicken soup continues to grow steadily in popularity. You see, in every drop of the glistening golden broth, there's the rich chicken flavor you like so much. Steeped in deep chicken flavor, too, is fluffy white rice in every fragrant plateful. And you'll also enjoy the pieces of melting tender chicken meat that Campbell's add. Yes, here is chicken soup, deep and full and rich, and you'll appreciate that from your first brimming spoonful. If you've already enjoyed this homey old-fashioned chicken soup as Campbell's make it, won't you remember to have it again soon? And if you haven't yet tried it, won't you do so at dinner tomorrow night? Because I promise you, just as sure as you like chicken, you'll like Campbell's chicken soup. And now our Campbell Playhouse presentation of The Murder of Roger Akroyd with our guest of the evening, Edna May Oliver. And ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I think you'd like to know that we have with us in the studio tonight, as a surprise visitor, none other than the celebrated Belgian detective, Mr. Hercule Poirot.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bid you good evening.
If we had time, which we have not, I'm sure nothing would please us more than to hear from Mr. Poirot. Unfortunately...
Why unfortunately when we have here a microphone?
But, Mr. Poirot, you don't understand.
I understand only that since my arrival in your country some weeks ago, I observed that there is circulate an impression of my person which I must now publicly refute. I trust that the embarrassment of my presence here tonight in Mr. Wells' studio will ensure from him an honest and lifelike portrait. It has been said that I am a little man. Regard for yourself that this is not so. I have 5 feet 2 inches of high. My head is perhaps egg-shaped, and I carry it perhaps a little to one side, the left, but my eyes shine green when I am excited. Beyond this, my mustache are the largest in Europe, and my force is in my brain and not in my feet. If these things are made clear, and Mr. Wells is a tribute to Hercule Poirot, I will be satisfied. The results of my little gray cells will speak for themselves. If you will show me where I am to sit, please. I thank you.
This is Mr. Poirot, Miss Oliver.
How do you do?
Miss Oliver, you have often wanted to meet me, I am sure. I compliment you.
Please, Mr. Poirot. Ladies and gentlemen, our Campbell Playhouse presentation of The Murder of Roger Akroyd.
Well, let me to start with give you some idea of the little village of King's Abbot, of which I have for so many years been the leading, I must admit, also the only physician and surgeon. My name, by the way, is Sheppard, James Sheppard. We have a large railway station, a small post office, 2 rival general stores, very few able-bodied men, a staggering number of unmarried ladies, none of whom are getting any younger, and an amazing number of retired military officers, all of whom are getting older. In fact, the only newcomer for many months lives next door to me, concerning whom little is known despite the earnest and tireless investigations carried on in respect to him by my sister Caroline. Caroline and her little group of earnest ferrets, or maiden ladies like herself, have been forced to content themselves with the simple fact of his nationality, which is alien, of his name, which is Poirot, the obvious fact that he putters around his garden all day growing cucumbers, and the suspicion, based chiefly on malicious deductions, he's a retired hairdresser. Let's see now. The main house of any importance, King's Abbot, is Fernley Hall, owned by Roger Akroyd, who's always looked more like a country squire than any country squire could really look, but who's actually an immensely wealthy manufacturer of wagon wheels, nearly 50 years of age, rubric in the face and genial of manner, in general, the life and soul of our, this week, the peaceful village. The other house of any importance has been left to Mrs. Ferrars by her late husband. Mrs. Ferrars died on the night of the 16th of September, a little less than a week ago. It seems longer than that. I was sent over for 8 o'clock the morning of the 17th. There was nothing to be done. She'd been dead some hours. I turned to my home as soon as I decently could, looking forward happily to the warm breakfast I'd missed, and rather unhappily to the certainty of a relentless cross-examination by my sister Caroline.
Is that you, James? What on earth are you doing out there in the hall?
Just hanging up my overcoat, my dear.
Oh, Mrs. Ferrars died in her sleep, didn't she?
Bacon is cold. How did you know? Out with the dawn securing information instead of warming the bacon, is that it? I suppose you're going to tell me she died of heart failure.
Annie told me. The milkman told her. He had it from Ferrars' cook.
Since you're bound to hear sooner or later, Caroline, from the greengrocer or the postman, I might as well tell you myself. She died of an overdose of sleeping medicine. She hadn't been sleeping well lately.
Nonsense. She took it on purpose.
Well, now, why on earth should Mrs. Ferrars wish to commit suicide? A widow, still fairly young, very well off, good health, nothing to do but enjoy life.
And looking forward to marrying Roger Akroyd. Don't forget to leave that out.
That's an item of fact only in your local gossip circle.
A fact's a fact. And there is such a thing as remorse, James, even if you're as wealthy as Mrs. Ferrars.
Remorse?
I have always been convinced she poisoned her husband, and I'm more than ever convinced of it now. If you'd arranged an inquest a year ago, as I suggested you should...
You're talking nonsense, Caroline.
Then you're absolutely satisfied it was an accident?
I'm satisfied this bacon is not going to get any warmer by itself, and it's time I went to the surgery to see my patient.
All right, James. You don't have to be grumpy about it. Oh, by the way, Mr. Akroyd's butler, Parker, called.
What about?
Mr. Akroyd wants to know if you'll dine with him this evening. He says he'd regard it as a great favor if you'd cancel any other engagement.
Of course I'll go, and don't worry, Caroline. I may tell you all about the dinner tomorrow.
Oh, then I'll give you something to tell Mr. Akroyd tonight. Rafe Peyton is back.
Rafe Peyton?
Yes, and he's staying at the Dog and Whistle. I know he's taking particular pains to be sure that Mr. Akroyd doesn't find out about it.
I wouldn't dream of telling him. Roger Ackroyd's relations with his stepson are his own affair. Believe me, Caroline, according to every interpretation except your own.
I can't help it if people tell me things.
In answer to questions.
Well, you'd better rush along to that precious surgery of yours. You've got 4 patients waiting.
How do you know?
Well, one can't help seeing through a window if one is looking through a window.
The distance from my house to Fernley Hall, Roger Ackroyd's home, is a little over 2 miles. I remember that evening as I walked that the subject of Caroline's latest piece of gossip kept returning to my mind. Rafe Peyton was in King's Abbot. Rafe Peyton, whom I'd known and liked since he was a child. Adopted by Akroyd upon the death of his mother, he'd grown up to be a handsome but what our narrow little village regarded as a rather wild young man. There'd been many stormy scenes between his stepfather and himself before he finally left for London. According to Caroline, he was secretly engaged to Flora Akroyd, Roger Ackroyd's niece, who with her mother was now living in Fernley Hall. According to Caroline, I say, and Caroline's information, I'm afraid, is always exact. However illegitimate her source may be. What's the trouble, Akroyd? A bit under the weather?
Yes, Doctor. I've had a little of that pain after food lately. You must give me some more of those tablets of yours.
I thought as much, Akroyd. I brought some up with me. In my bag in the hall. I'll get them.
No, don't trouble. Make certain that window is closed, will you, Sheppard?
Of course. Well, that one's open.
I'll put the latch across, will you?
All right. I say, what's really bothering you, Akroyd?
The door's closed, isn't it?
Yes.
Sheppard, nobody knows what I've gone through in the last 24 hours.
What's the trouble?
You're an old friend, Doctor. My oldest friend, perhaps. You attended Ashley Ferrers in his last illness, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Did it ever enter your mind that he might have been poisoned?
Well, frankly, Akroyd, I don't think I should.
He was poisoned.
By whom?
His wife. She told me so herself yesterday.
Yesterday? You mean a few hours before she died, she told you?
Yes. Some weeks ago, I asked Mrs. Ferrers to marry me. She refused. Last week, I asked her again, and she consented. Yesterday, I called upon her. I noticed that she'd been very strange in her manner for some days. Now, without the least warning, she broke down completely. She told me everything. Her hatred of her swine of a husband, her growing love for me, and then, a year ago, the dreadful means she had taken to free herself. It was poison, Sheppard. Murder in cold blood.
Murder? Are you sure, Akroyd?
That wasn't all. It seems there's one person who's known all along what she did, who's been blackmailing her for huge sums. It was the strain of that drove her nearly mad.
Who's the man?
She wouldn't tell me his name.
Have you any suspicion?
I don't dare have a suspicion. Something she said made me think that the person in question might actually be a member of my household. But that can't be so. I won't let it be so. I must have misunderstood her.
What'd you say to her?
What could I say? She made me a promise to do nothing for 24 hours, and she refused to give me the name of the scoundrel who'd been blackmailing her. I never dreamt she'd kill herself. Sheppard, will you hand me that letter on the table there, in the blue envelope?
This one?
Thanks. It's from her. It arrived during dinner. She must have written it just before she...
You think she wrote you the little bit she didn't tell you, is that it? Name of the man?
Yes, I think so. I've got to open it, and yet I'm afraid... What's that?
What?
I thought the latch of the door gave a bit.
Yes? I'll see if there's anyone there. No one.
Nerves, I expect. Are you sure you shut the window?
Yes, it's closed.
Well, I'll read it. If I read it to you, it won't seem so bad. I won't be facing it alone, no matter what the name. My dear, my very dear Roger, a life calls for a life. I see that. I saw it in your face this afternoon, so I'm taking the only road open to me. I leave to you the punishment of the person who made my life a hell on earth for the last year. I would not tell you the name this afternoon, but I propose to write it to you now, dear Roger, now that I have nothing more to fear. Will you forgive me, Sheppard, but I see I must read this alone. It was meant for my eyes and my eyes alone.
Do you think that's wise, Roger?
I'd rather wait.
Well, if you insist on not letting me help you.
If you must put it that way, yes, my dear friend, I do insist. I'm sorry.
I left Fernley Hall at 9:15. From Fernley Hall to my house, it takes, as a rule, about 3/4 of an hour. The night was the moon shining, and I did it in less. On the road, I noticed the lights blazing in our parlor. Caroline was entertaining. Through the window, I caught sight of an egg-shaped head, partially covered with suspiciously black hair, 2 immense mustaches, and a pair of watchful eyes.
James, come in. You're just in time for hot milk and crackers.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. Oh, excuse me, I'm
This is
sorry.
my brother, Dr. Sheppard.
I am enchanted.
James, this is Mr. Hercules Poirot.
How do you do, sir?
Mr. Poirot is our new neighbor.
If I may be permitted one slight correction, my name is Hercule Poirot. Your good sister proceeds on the familiar English assumption that we are not English, do not know how to pronounce our own silly names.
He's just making fun of me, James. He has a very dry wit. We've had quite an interesting conversation.
I question that it was two-sided.
And you know what Mr. Poirot told me? He's a policeman.
Pardon, mademoiselle. Not yet. I see. Do you appreciate Hercule Poirot? His true worth. The name Poirot, mademoiselle, is known today in every continent, every land, nay, in every city of the world. I am become the mode, the last word. I am as much a specialist as an Harley Street physician.
Well, that's what I said, didn't I? A detective.
Yeah, consulting detective.
That's what I said.
I'm afraid, Mr. Poirot, you find little to occupy a man of your talents in this village.
Mr. Poirot tells me what he's looking for just now is peace and quiet.
Precisely, mademoiselle. That and the correct soil, which you have in so great abundance here in King's Abbot for the cultivation of cucumbers.
Oh, I'll answer it. It's probably Mrs. Bates and her rheumatism.
Never mind, Caroline. I'll take it.
Oh, all right.
Hello. Hello. What? What's that? Certainly, of course. Of course I will at once.
What is it?
It's Parker, the butler, calling from Fernley. Just found Roger Akroyd. Murdered.
Why, Dr. Sheppard.
Where is he, Parker?
I beg your pardon, sir.
Mr. Akroyd, don't stand there staring at me. Have you notified the police?
The police,
What's the matter with you, Parker? You called me to tell me your master's been murdered.
The master murdered?
Didn't you telephone me not 5 minutes ago and tell me Mr. Akroyd had been found murdered?
Me? Oh, no, sir.
My English is not of the best, Dr. Sheppard, but there seems to be a peculiar misapprehension.
Why, Dr. Sheppard, I'll
never... I'll give you the exact words I heard just now on the phone. This is Parker, the butler at Fernley speaking. Will you please come at once, sir? Mr. Akroyd has been murdered.
But, Doctor,
Where is Mr. Akroyd, Parker?
Why, he's in the study,
If you don't mind waiting down here a moment, Monsieur Poirot, I won't be a minute.
This way, sir.
But of course, of course.
I'd rather not intrude on him, sir, if you don't mind.
Well, I will, then. Door's locked.
Mr. Akroyd must have locked himself in and possibly just dropped off to sleep, sir.
Akroyd! Akroyd! Look here, Parker. I'm to break this door in, or rather we are.
But, Dr. Sheppard...
I'll take the responsibility.
Oh, if you say so, sir.
All right, here we go. Together now. 1, 2, 3. The inspector? Head is sideways, permitting the dagger to penetrate the jugular. Death was instantaneous.
Has the body been moved?
Beyond making certain that life is extinct, I haven't disturbed the body in any way.
You didn't touch the dagger, did you, Doctor?
No, Inspector.
No, good. Well, we'll want that for fingerprints.
Rummy-looking thing, isn't it? Foreign-looking.
Maurice Silver. Mr. Akroyd was quite a collector. There are his silver cases over against the wall.
Eh? Who are you?
My name's Raymond. I'm Mr. Akroyd's private secretary.
That's right, Inspector. It's been with Mr. Akroyd almost 2 years now.
Oh, very well. Now, Doctor, how long should you say he's been dead?
Half an hour at least, perhaps longer.
You had to break down the door, eh? What about the window?
The English people, they have a mania for the fresh air. The big air is all very well outside where it belongs. Why admit it to the house?
Hey, who are you? How did you get in here?
You call yourself, unfortunate man, an inspector of police, and you say to me, who am I? Hercule Poirot, master detective, possessed of the finest brain in Europe. Known in every continent, in every land, nay, in every city.
Not in my part of the world, you ain't. I never heard of you.
I'll vouch for Monsieur Poirot, Inspector. He's at my house when the phone call came. Mr. Akroyd's death.
Oh, well, all right then. You can stay. But this is my case, and don't you forget it. Now then, when was Mr. Akroyd last seen alive?
I don't know, probably by me. And I left, let me see, a little before 9.
Mr. Akroyd was certainly alive at 9:30. I heard him in here talking.
Who to, Mr. Raymond?
I don't know. I just heard his voice. But I know it was 9:30.
You didn't hear any of their conversation, did you, Mr. Raymond?
I did catch a fragment of it. It did strike me as a trifle odd.
Remember, please, the words exact. It is very important.
Not sure that I can.
The words exact.
Wait a minute, Mr. Poirot. Who's conducting this case? You or me? Now then, Mr. Raymond, what was these words you heard Mr. Akroyd say at 9:30? Well, come on.
I'd swear under oath the exact words were, "The calls on my purse have been so frequent of late that I find it impossible to accede to your request."
Thank you, Mr. Raymond, very much.
I beg pardon, Inspector.
Well, what is it, Parker?
I just remembered. Miss Flora saw Mr. Akroyd later than 9:30, about 9:45. She was just coming out of this room.
You mean she was just closing the study door?
No, sir. She'd already closed the door when I saw her. She told me Mr. Akroyd was not to be disturbed again tonight.
Where's Miss Flora?
Upstairs in her room. Shall I ask her to come down?
No. I'll go up.
One moment, if I might be so humble, Monsieur Inspector. Could I ask our friend Parker for a little information?
Well, what is it?
Thank you for your so gracious permission, Inspector. Tell me, Parker, is this room exactly as it was when you entered it with Dr. Sheppard?
Well, to tell you the truth, sir, I felt myself that this chair here was drawn out a little more. It has been puzzling.
The grandfather chair between the door and the window.
That's right, sir.
That's very curious. No one would want to sit in a chair in such a position.
What are you talking about? When a man wants to sit, he sits, don't he?
Who pushed it back in place, I wonder? Did you, Parker?
No, sir. I was too upset at seeing the master and all. It isn't important, is it, sir?
It is completely unimportant. That's why it is so interesting.
You're very late for breakfast, James.
I was up quite late, Karen. I'm afraid I forgot your natural anxiety to learn details you're not supposed to know.
Well, don't worry about me, James. Mr. Poirot was working his cucumbers at daybreak this morning. 6:37 it was. And I've been with him ever since.
Good. Perhaps you have some information for me, Caroline.
Perhaps I have. Or are you going to pretend you know what suddenly occurred to Mr. Poirot in the night? So that he couldn't sleep for an hour or two after he got home?
Inasmuch as I haven't seen our friend since he went to bed.
Well, I don't feel very much like telling you either. If I didn't know that he'd tell you himself, I don't think I would. Well, he was worrying about the prints of some shoes outside the window. The way the rubber studs were worn down, he says, should mean something to him. But he doesn't know what.
Did you explain it to him, Caroline? Hasn't the cook been of any help to you, or the milkman, or the Ladies' Aid Society?
You needn't always be facetious, James.
Isn't the bacon needn't always be cold, I dare say, but it is, and so am I. But not cold, but facetious.
James, you know what Mr. Poirot said? He said I had the makings of a born detective in me. He particularly admires my wonderful instinct into human nature. And he told me a lot about the little grey cells of the brain. He says his are of the first quality, slightly above that, in fact.
I'm sure they are.
He thinks you're very intelligent, too.
Good morning, good Sheppard. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Poirot.
A beautiful morning, is it not? See, how is this for a cucumber? Beautiful. Now, my friend, it is yours. I give it you. Altogether, my good Shepherd, I have a wonderful morning. Everywhere I learn things new and wonderful things. And all the time the gray cells of Hercule Poirot, they are working. Miss Caroline, she tells me so much about this Ray Peyton. This morning I go to the hotel. It's what you call it.
The dog and whistle.
Thank you, Miss Caroline. And I think I will talk myself to Ray Peyton. Then they tell me at the Dog and Whistle that was here last night another gentleman asking for Mr. Peyton.
Why, James, I certainly think you might have
No, Caroline, I thought someone ought to inform Ray of his uncle's death. The least one could do, since no one but myself and the members of your intelligence service knew that he was in King's Abbot at all. Matter of fact, Ray Peyton left the Dog and Whistle at 9 o'clock last night and never came back.
Well, what on earth do you think happened to him?
Ray Peyton has a right to come and go as he pleases. He might have gone anywhere. He might even have gone back to London.
Leaving his luggage behind? I wonder.
Oh, by the way, my good Shepherd, the telephone call.
Oh, you mean the one that came while you were at the house with Mr.
That
Poirot?
is the one. Tell me, do you think it is possible that someone could have telephoned you and imitated Parker's voice sufficiently to deceive you?
Well, he said he was Parker. James really doesn't know Parker's voice well enough.
Of course. But the telephone call was traced this morning by my friend Inspector Hempstead. It didn't come from Fanley Hall at all. It was put through to you at 9:50 last night from a public call office at King's Abbot Station, and at 23 the night mail is for Liverpool. It is the inspector's opinion that the murderer may have left King's Abbot on that very train.
Ah, then you do believe that Ray Peyton?
I believe nothing, mademoiselle, until it is proved.
Well, then, what do you think?
I think, Miss Caroline, that Roger Akroyd was murdered. Outside of that, I think that I will have to think a good deal more.
Oh, it's an outrage. That's what it is. A little man, not even an Englishman, a foreigner with moustaches, comes into this home, a British home, a house of mourning, unsolicited, unwelcome.
Oh, Mother, do be quiet.
Flora, I will not. He comes in here, into my own brother-in-law's house, questions us like a lot of criminals, besmirches our kith and kin.
Mrs. Akroyd.
Mr. Poirot, you must excuse my mother. My uncle's death was a terrible shock.
I understand, mademoiselle. It is very little that Hercule Poirot does not understand.
Honestly, no, Mr. Poirot, you're on the wrong track. Ray Peyton has nothing to do with this crime. The mere fact that he was hard-pressed for money...
Was he hard-pressed for money, Mr. Raymond?
Raymond, now you've made it seem as though...
Miss Akroyd, I'm merely telling the truth. Yes, he was hard-pressed. He's always applying to his stepfather for money.
But,
Please,
Poirot,
mademoiselle, had he done so of late, Mr. Raymond? During the last week, for example?
Mr. Akroyd didn't mention such a fact to me. Of course, Mr. Peyton will never again have to apply to anyone for money.
You mean that Mr. Ackroyd's will...
Exactly. After paying certain legacies and bequeaths, servants, charities, and so on.
Aha, including yourself, Mr. Raymond.
Mr. Akroyd was good enough to remember me to the extent of £1,000.
Well, it's not surprising. Go on, please.
Well, Miss Flora Akroyd inherits £20,000 outright. The residue, including this property and an outstanding control in the business, goes to Ray Peyton.
You have been familiar with this will for some time past, Mr. Raymond.
Roger Ackroyd's confidential secretary.
Of course. And Mr. Ackroyd possessed a very large fortune indeed, did he not?
Fortune that would have been regarded as large even in less tax-ridden times.
Then the immediate inheritance of such a large sum would have eased very considerably the present difficulties of Mr. Ray Peyton.
Mr. Poirot, you don't...
Is that so, Mr. Raymond?
Yes, that is so.
You awful little man, talking that way, when you know how Flora feels about Peyton. The idea that you suspect him of killing his sister.
Him no more than any other, madame.
You know what I think? I think Roger's death was an accident. Roger was so fond of handling curios. His hand must have slipped or something. He was really a very strange man. Would you believe it? He never gave Flora and me an allowance. His own family. And of course we didn't have a penny of our own. Why, at this very moment...
If you need any ready money, Mrs. Ackroyd, Mr. Ackroyd cashed a check for £100 yesterday for wages and other expenses due today. The money was never spent.
And where, if you please, is this money?
He always kept his cash in his bedroom.
I suggest that we see if the money is there.
Why, Mr. Poirot, surely...
Am I to understand, you miserable little foreigner, that you're intimating that
I merely intimate, ladies and gentlemen, that we see if the money is still there. Ladies and gentlemen, there are here only £60.
Oh, that's impossible. Let me see. 10, 20... The man's right. It is 60.
This is terrible.
Dr. Sheppard, Mr. Poirot, I hope nobody believes...
One must believe there are 60 pounds where there were 100. However, I'm sure no one would suggest that you, Mr. Raymond, or you, Mrs. Akroyd, who alone knew of the money...
Mr. Poirot, I protest.
Just one moment.
Flora.
I took the money. I'm a thief. I'm a common, vulgar little thief. Now you know. I'm glad that it's come out.
I'm glad also, Miss Flora.
You are?
Yes, because now we comprehend why Parker thought he saw you coming out of your uncle's room at 10:15.
But he did see her coming out of the door. He said so.
No, that's just what he did not see. He saw Miss Flora outside the door with her hand on the handle. He did not see Miss Flora come out of the study for a good reason. Miss Flora was never in the study.
But where else could she have been?
Perhaps on the stairs.
Well, those stairs only lead to Mr. Akroyd's bedroom.
Precisely.
Then you knew I took the 40 pounds?
I knew nothing, but I suspected much. As even now, I suspect that this money you have taken, you did not take it for yourself.
I took it for myself. You can take what steps you please.
I assure you, Miss Akroyd, no steps will be taken. Only one thing. Why did you not tell me sooner? Me, Hercule Poirot, who in the end will know everything. Why do not all of you tell me the truth?
Just because Flora made a little mistake. That's no
Silence,
reason to...
silence, madame. Ladies and gentlemen, I am amazed. My powers might not be what they were. In all probability, this is the last case I shall ever investigate. But Hercule Poirot does not end with a failure. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you I mean to know, and I shall know in spite of you all.
How do you mean, in spite of us all?
But just that, monsieur. Every one of you in this room is concealing something from me. It may be something trivial, which is supposed to have no bearing on the case. Each one of you has something to hide. I appeal to you. Tell me the truth now. The whole truth. Miss Flora, my good Sheppard, Mrs. Akroyd, Parker, Mr. Raymond. Will no one speak? It is a pity.
You are listening to Orson Welles in the Campbell Playhouse presentation of The Murder of Roger Akroyd with Edna May Oliver. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System. This is Ernest Chappell, ladies and gentlemen, welcoming you back to the Campbell Playhouse. In a moment, we shall resume our presentation of The Murder of Roger Akroyd. Meantime, I'd like to call your attention to this interesting fact. Authorities tell us the young people of today are healthier than the youth of any previous generation. And they say that a big contributing cause is the broader use of the right kind of foods. Take soup, for example. Women have always realized the value of good soup in the weekly diet. But it took a long time to make it. Then came Campbell soups, and women one after another tried them. They compared them for wholesomeness and nourishment with their own homemade soups. They saw how much their families enjoyed the fine flavor of these soups of Campbell's. And because women no longer had to find time to make it, soup began to come to the table more and more frequently. Today, soup figures more importantly than ever before in the preparation of sensible, nourishing family meals. And now Orson Welles continues our presentation of The Murder of Roger Akroyd with Edna May Oliver.
I am a village surgeon, and Hercule Poirot is a distinguished Belgian detective, so it was scarcely for me to tell him I thought he was wasting his time. Certainly not for me to tell him that he was getting on my nerves. Not that I didn't admire his extraordinary cleverness and insight. Poirot was right, for instance, about the dagger. Police investigation confirmed his suspicion that the fingerprints on the handle of the dagger were those of Roger Akroyd, the murdered man, though the position of the dagger definitely precluded suicide. It was Poirot who established that it had not been Parker, the butler, who summoned me on the phone that night to what had become a house of death. And again, it was Hercule Poirot who made it indubitably clear that nobody had seen Roger Akroyd alive after 9:30, at which time Raymond, the secretary, had heard Akroyd's voice in the study. In spite of all this, it seemed to me that Hercule Poirot was making little real progress in solving the mystery of Roger Akroyd's death. Furthermore, it seemed to me a curious thing for a detective of his self-proclaimed standing to be spending so much of his precious time in idle chatter with my sister, Caroline.
I had a very interesting chat with Mr. Poirot, James. He thinks me very intelligent.
So you've told me. Is it just a coincidence, Caroline, that on those occasional mornings when the bacon is both warm and crisp, it should be so far away from me that I can't reach it?
Too much bacon isn't good for you.
No such thing as too much bacon. And I'll be the judge of what's good for me. I rather fancy that at least is something I know best, Caroline.
You know so many things, James. You're so self-complacent. That's why it's difficult to talk to you. That's why you get the idea that people are trying to pump you.
Some more bacon, please.
Poirot says I'd make an excellent detective.
Did he?
We had a very interesting chat.
I wonder if Monsieur Poirot found it interesting.
He said I was more valuable than anyone he's met here. He told me a lot about his life, too. About a mad nephew of his. You know that Prince Paul of Mauritania, the one who just married a dancer? Well,
I do not know her. You do not know her, and I do not care to hear about her or about his mad nephew either. Did he ask you any questions, Caroline?
No questions. We just chatted and chatted.
More bacon, please.
I have a little theory of my own, James. Mr. Poirot didn't ask me, but he might have.
Whom do you suspect?
I don't suspect anybody. I know. Parker was here in your surgery the morning of the murder. That place is full of poison. He's sure to have taken some. As a matter of fact, that's been my theory right along. Roger Akroyd was poisoned in his food that night.
Nonsense. He was stabbed in the neck. You know that as well as I do.
After death, to make a false clue.
I examined the body, and I know what I'm talking about. That wound wasn't inflicted after death. It was the cause of death. And don't look so omniscient. Next, you'll be telling me you know more about medicine than I do. Perhaps you think you could take over my practice.
Oh, don't be ridiculous. You know I haven't a license.
That afternoon, Caroline had a mahjong party made up of her little group of village gossipers, in whose opinion, I now learned, Rafe Peyton was mysteriously concealed somewhere in Cranchester, the only big town anywhere near us. Of course, that was true. Miss Gannett's maid, it seems, had contributed the additional information that while taking a walk that afternoon on Cranchester Road, she'd seen Monsieur Poirot in a large black car coming from that direction. After that, I was not surprised to learn that Monsieur Poirot had been invited to my house for dinner. Caroline believes, whenever possible, in getting her information directly from headquarters.
A little more raspberry shake, Mr. Poirot.
Under no circumstances. I am already a man of a corpulence so great it would hardly become me if I, well, yes, perhaps, yes. There is no harm in a little raspberry shake.
There you are, Mr. Poirot.
I beg your pardon, Caroline, if I might have my first helping.
Oh, I'll sort this out, Miss James. There you are.
Thanks.
Mr. Poirot, what do you think about Rafe Peyton now?
What I think would scarcely be regarded as legal evidence in the courtroom, mademoiselle.
Dear. No.
You are incredulous, mademoiselle Sheppard.
I am incredulous.
You have a theory, perhaps.
I don't have a theory. I know.
Oh, Caroline.
James, don't meddle about in what you don't understand. There are several points to this case.
Yes, mademoiselle.
Point number one. Mr. Akroyd was heard talking to someone after 9:30. Point number two. At some time during the evening, Rafe Peyton must have come in through the window as evidenced by the prints of his shoes. Point number three. Mr. Akroyd was nervous that evening and could have only admitted someone he knew. Point number 4. The person with Akroyd at 9:30 was asking for money. We know Rafe Peyton was in a scrape.
Admirable.
Oh, and one other thing, Mr. Poirot. I found out something for you today. The boots Rafe Peyton was wearing that night, they were not brown, they were black.
Ah, you have found that out for me. Thank you. You are sure, mademoiselle, they were brown or black?
Positive?
Too bad. If they were only black, those boots.
I mean, if they were.
You mean... Yes, I understand. Rafe Peyton is guilty or innocent according to whether his boots are brown or black.
Really, Mr. Poirot?
It could easily be. For murder, there was with Mr. Peyton so many motives.
First motive, blackmail. Rafe Peyton may have been the man who blackmailed Mr. Fetters. Reason? His general money need. The second motive, the certainty of a great inheritance through Mr. Akroyd's death.
And the third motive, Caroline?
Very simple. Mr. Akroyd's violent disapproval of Rafe's proposed marriage to Miss Flora.
Well, after listening to you, Caroline, I'd say the case looks very black against him.
I haven't a case, James. I know.
Late that afternoon, Monsieur Poirot called on me to ask if I could arrange a little conference room at his home that night. There was to be present Mrs. Akroyd, Flora, Raymond, and Parker. I think Caroline, who was present when he called, would have given 10 years of her life to have been added to the list. For my part, I would have been only too glad to yield up my place among those who on that particular evening gathered around the beaming countenance of the Belgian detective and cucumber breeder.
Yeah, I'm clearing my throat. That is an accepted signal in this country that a meeting is about to begin. Quiet, everybody. I will read the list. You will please answer to your names. Raymond.
Yes?
Parker.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Akroyd.
Yes, but I wanted to speak to you.
Yes, will be sufficient. Miss Flora.
Yes?
Mr. Poirot, what's the meaning of all this?
The list I have just read is the list of suspected persons. Every one of you present had the opportunity to kill Mr. Akroyd.
I won't stand for this. I'm going.
You will not go, madame, until you have heard what I have to say. I clear my throat again. And now I commence at the beginning. Until now, ladies and gentlemen, we have all been trying to answer to ourselves one principal question. Who was in the room with Mr. Akroyd at 9:30? Not Dr. Sheppard, since I myself can prove that he was at home. Not Miss Flora, nor Mrs. Akroyd, nor Mr. Raymond, with whose actions on that evening we are well acquainted, nor Parker, who has furnished me with a satisfactory alibi. Who then? This is the part of Hercule Poirot, the cleverest, the most audacious question. Was anyone with him?
Are you trying to make me out a liar, Mr. Poirot? I tell you, I distinctly heard voices. I distinctly heard the words that Mr. Akroyd was speaking.
Mr. Raymond, the words that Mr. Akroyd said. The calls on my purse have been so frequent of late that I believe it is impossible for me to accede to your request. Does nothing strike you as odd about them? Their style, for example.
No, he frequently dictated letters to me using exactly the same style.
That is precisely what I seek to arrive at. Would any man use such a phrase in talking to another, I think not. My friends, you have all forgotten one thing. The stranger who called at the house in the proceeding weekend, the firm he represented. You remember, Mr. Raymond?
Dictaphone company.
A dictaphone, that's what you think.
Mr. Akroyd had promised to invest in a dictaphone, you remember. Me, I had the curiosity to inquire of the company in question. Their reply, Mr. Raymond, was that Mr. Akroyd did purchase a dictaphone from their representative. Why he concealed the matter from you, his confidential secretary, I do not know.
Must have meant to surprise me with it. He had quite a childish love of surprising people.
Oh, there's only one man who could have done it.
You mean Rafe Peyton?
Mother!
Oh, let's face it. If he's innocent, he should be able to prove it. If he isn't...
If only he'd come forward.
That is your advice, Mr. Raymond? That he should come forward?
Certainly. Do you know where he is?
Me? I know everything. Remember that. The truth of the telephone call, of the footprints on the windowsill, of the hiding place of Ray Peyton.
Where is he?
Not very far away.
Where?
In Rochester.
Where?
No, he is not in Rochester. He is here, in the doorway of this room.
Ray!
Flora, my darling.
Have I not told you all at least 36 times that it was useless to conceal things from Hercule Poirot? That always I discover the little secret. It is my business. From Dr. Sheppard's sister Caroline, ladies and gentlemen, I learned that the doctor and Ray Peyton, they are old friends. Dr. Sheppard knows that things look very black against his friend Peyton. He tells him the old story.
Yes, he did. He explained to me how suspicion was bound to fall on me, and I had no real alibi.
And with the best of intentions, people sometimes make errors. That's why Dr. Sheppard consented to do what he could to help Mr. Peyton. He was successful in hiding him from the police.
Where? In his own house?
No, indeed, Mr. Raymond. You should ask yourself the question that I, Hercule Poirot, did. If the good doctor is concealing the young man, what place would he choose? It must necessarily be somewhere near at hand. I think of Rochester, a hotel. No. Lodgings, even more emphatically, no. Where then? I have it. A nursing home. I make inquiries. Yes, at one of them, a patient was brought there by the doctor himself early on Saturday morning. That patient, I had no difficulty in identifying him as Ray Peyton. He arrived at my house yesterday, and now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the point of this evening's meeting. Ray Peyton says he is innocent of the killing of Roger Akroyd.
Oh, I am. I swear by heaven I am.
Please, Mr. Peyton, please. You have just heard Mr. Peyton declare he is innocent. Yet he has 3 motives for the murder and no alibi.
Well, I certainly don't see how you can sit there.
I am possessing the floor, Mrs. Akroyd. Listen carefully, everybody. To save Mr. Peyton, the real criminal must confess. I speak to you, Hercule Poirot. I know that the murder of Mr. Akroyd is in this room now, at this table. Tonight. Tomorrow in the morning, the truth goes to the police.
You mean you know who?
Yes. At the moment, I know. I alone. For the murder of Roger Akroyd, there is only one way out. And that way does not lead to freedom. And it is to the murderer now that I speak. This is a matter of life and death. And I, Hercule Poirot, am not joking. Good night.
James, what are you doing out there in the hall?
Just hanging my overcoat, my dear.
Well, aren't you coming in to chat?
I'm very tired, Caroline.
At least you can tell me what happened last night.
Mr. Poirot told us all about his little gray cells again.
Oh, does he think Rafe Peyton is guilty?
No.
Well, he's crazy.
You can go over and tell him so in the morning. Good night, Caroline. I'm very tired. My arm aches from writing. I've written it all out. Now Peyton will be cleared. As I think back, I'm not quite certain why I urged Akroyd to read that letter before it was too late. Perhaps I subconsciously realized that with a pig-headed chap like that, it my best chance of getting him not to read it. His nervousness that night was interesting psychologically. He knew danger was close at hand, yet he never once suspected me as the blackmailer of Mrs. Ferrars. The dagger was an afterthought. I'd thought of a very little weapon of my own, but I saw the dagger lying on the silver table. It occurred to me how much better it'd be to use a weapon that couldn't be traced to me. I suppose I must have meant to murder him all along. As soon as I'd heard of Mrs. Ferrars' death, I felt convinced that she'd have told him everything before she died. So I went home and took my precautions. The dictaphone he had given me 2 days before to adjust. Something gone a little wrong with it, and I persuaded Akroyd to let me have a go at it instead of sending it back. I did what I wanted to it. Took it up with me in my bag. Studied that evening. When it was all over, I looked around the room for the door. Quite satisfied. Nothing had been left undone. The dictaphone is on the table by the window. Time to go off at 9:30. The mechanism of that little device was rather clever, based on the principal alarm clock, and the armchair was pulled out so as to hide it from the door. I never dreamed that Parker would notice that chair. Certainly would not have remembered Poirot hadn't asked him. Having the American sailor with a toothache call me from King's Abbot that night is a stroke of genius. There's no way for anyone listening to have told that it was not Parker. I still don't know how Poirot thought that one out. My only regret is about Caroline, and yet I feel I can trust Poirot. She'll never know the truth, and I'm glad of that. I shouldn't like her to know she's fond of me, and then, too, she's proud. My death will be a grief to her, but grief passes. When I've finished writing, I shall enclose this whole manuscript in an envelope, address it to Poirot. And now, because I'm tired, take some sleeping powders. Because I'm very tired, I will take more sleeping powders than I should. More than anybody should. I suppose I ought to feel sorry. I am sorry. Sorry that Hercule Poirot ever came to King's Abbot to grow his cucumbers.
This concludes our Campbell Playhouse presentation of The Murder of Roger Akroyd. In just a moment, Orson Welles will return to the microphone with our guest of the evening, Edna May Oliver. Meanwhile, I'd like to take just time enough to say this to every woman listening. We at Campbell's know good cooking, and so, of course, do you. Speaking, therefore, as one good cook to another, we'd like you to try our chicken soup. Try it, if you will, in the same friendly yet critical way you'd sample a neighbor's good dish or send in one of your own for her to try. And if you'll do that, I know you'll find this soup deep and full and rich in chicken flavor from the first spoonful to the last delicious drop. Indeed, I promise you, just as sure as you like chicken, you like Campbell's chicken soup. And now here is Orson Welles with Edna May Oliver.
Never mind, Orson Welles. What about me, Hercule Poirot? Miss Oliver, have I not the little gray cells?
You and your gray cells. If you ask me, I think Rafe Peyton committed the murder.
After listening to my explanation so careful?
Especially after listening to your exclamation so careful. Now, in the days when I was a detective...
Scotland Yard?
No, RKO. You and your one little murder. Why, when I was a detective, no sooner did I establish the identity of the murderer than he was murdered, and I had to start all over again.
It is well for you, Miss Oliver, to belittle the genius of Hercule Poirot. But remember this. Hercule Poirot always laughs last. Attend. I laugh last. Ha, ha, ha.
I accept that as a laugh. Go on.
I have observed the proceedings here in the studio, and I have detected a circumstance which has indubitably escaped you are untrained to watch for such things. Almost it had escaped me myself. Not only did I discover that the gentleman who told the story, Dr. Sheppard, was himself the murderer of Roger Akroyd, but I now reveal to you that he was enacted in Mr. Wells' little anecdote by none other than that beloved portrayer of dramatic roles, that celebrated delineator of character, that unparalleled purveyor of protean portraiture, that internationally celebrated...
You refer to Orson Welles, I take it, Mr. Welles?
I do.
Now I would like to be allowed a little observation of my own. Excuse me, Poirot. Avez-vous la plume de matin?
What?
I'm not finished yet. Où est le chapeau de ma mère? That's all right, Mr. Poirot. I just wanted to see if you could really speak French. Attend, Mr. Poirot. I laugh last.
Good night, Edna May Oliver. And may I say I hope that this will not be the last time that you'll put me in my place in this program.
In tonight's Campbell Playhouse production of The Murder of Roger Akroyd, the role of Caroline Sheppard was played by Edna May Oliver. The part of Roger Akroyd was played by Alan Napier, Mrs. Akroyd by Brenda Forbes, and Flora Akroyd by Mary Taylor. George Coulouris was heard as Inspector Hempstead, Ray Collins as Mr. Raymond, and Everett Sloan as Parker the butler. Dr. James Sheppard, who committed the murder, was played by Orson Welles, and Hercule Poirot, who arrested Dr. Sheppard, was played by Orson Welles. The music for tonight's production, with the exception of the Noel Coward melodies, was composed and, of course, conducted by Bernard Herrmann. And now, Mr. Wells, I see we have just a moment. Can we have a word about next week's story?
Next week, ladies and gentlemen, it will be our proud pleasure to give you The Garden of Allah, starring Claudette Colbert. The Robert Hitchens masterpiece, both as a book and a play, has engaged the affections of the peoples of the world for 35 years with its ageless story of a great love and a greater renunciation. If Miss Colbert is listening in, I want her to know how eagerly we're all looking forward to the privilege of having her with us in the Campbell Playhouse. No other actress that I know is more ideally suited than Miss Colbert for the part of Dominique, the English girl who found in the great Sahara Desert the love that gave the final meaning to her life. And so until then, till next Sunday in Claudette Colbert in the Garden of Allah, my sponsors, the makers of Campbell Soups, and all of us here in the Campbell Playhouse remain obediently yours.
The makers of Campbell Soups join Orson Welles in inviting you to be with us in the Campbell Playhouse again next Sunday evening when we bring you The Garden of Allah with Claudette Colbert as our guest star. Meanwhile, if you have enjoyed tonight's Campbell Playhouse presentation, won't you tell your grocer so tomorrow when you order Campbell's Chicken Soup? This is Ernest Chappell saying thank you and good night.
This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, that was definitely a different ending. According to the information I've been able to read, Christie got the idea from this from a brother-in-law who suggested it would be interesting to have a mystery story where the killer turns out to be the Dr. Watson character. Because in the novel, Dr. Sheppard was the one who was assisting Poirot. So this was, of course, a little controversial at the time, but it has been done not all too often. You do it too often and people will get just really suspicious of you all the time. But it has been done on occasion. Edna May Oliver's reference to playing a detective, she actually played the spinster detective Hildegard Winters. The Winters character came out about a year after the first Miss Marple story. And many people think that the Caroline Sheppard character may have been a bit of an inspiration for Miss Marple. So some nice connections there. As I said before the show began, performance by Welles, a little bit hammy, but not in a way that you would not expect from Orson Welles. Clearly having some fun here. Not the best Poirot voice. You can go to greatdetectives.net, and I actually found a video clip from David Suchet on YouTube where he just explains how he takes his voice, which is actually a low voice to the higher pitch of Poirot. It's a very interesting thing to watch or listen to. Just go to greatdetectives.net. We have the clip right there for you. At least if you're listening to it on the day that we uploaded it. Otherwise, you may have to go down, scroll a bit, or dig, but we did post that there for you. Also, for those who have the premium site or the app, we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're going to share some Agatha Christie stories that are, they're mystery stories, but not necessarily detective stories. And so we're going to have some Agatha Christie extras the next 4 or 5 weeks, starting with today. And it's another performance by Orson Welles. It's Philomel Cottage. All right, well, that will do it for us for today. We'll be back tomorrow with Let George Do It. And next week, we'll have an episode of Murder Clinic featuring Poirot. I hope you will be listening then. In the meantime, well, this episode is brought to you by the support of our listeners. Thank you so much for your support. And want to say a special thank you to Aaron, who sends along another kind donation. Thank you so much, Aaron. Your support's definitely appreciated. Well, now it's time for today's episode of Let George Do It. This one is called And Hope to Die.
Personal notice, danger's my stock and trade. If the job's too tough for you to handle, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details. Standard Oil Company of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and Standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. And Hope to Die, another adventure of George Valentine.
Dear Mr. Valentine, there are certain people in the world who aren't like other people. They live in a place built of quicksilver, and we don't always understand the secrets of their hearts and minds. They're in a world of their own, but our world benefits because they are there. That's the kind of a person I work for. I've been her secretary for the past 6 years. She can't even remember my last name. She's a combination of church music and just plain cat. Mr. Valentine, I'm writing because she needs your help. She's being threatened or blackmailed or something, though I'm sure she could be murdered before she'd bother to write a letter herself. She's not well, she works too hard, and if she slaps your face, don't quit, don't slap back. Because underneath, she's nothing but a very small child. And for some reason, very, very frightened. Also, as I'm sure you'll agree, Miss Flora Stewart is the greatest actress in the world.
Valentine, I never heard of you. What have you done lately?
Miss Stewart's secretary said we should come here to her home.
Never mind. Here, Sonny, grab that light plug.
Light plug?
He'll be downstairs in a minute, Osborne.
Don't you know what a light plug is? Oh, here, I'll do it. Ask the doc there for a pill. It'll brighten you up.
Real sharp dialogue. Why didn't you say plug in the phonograph?
Wouldn't you like a chair, young lady?
Shut up. Listen.
It droppeth as the gentle
You
rain
wanted to hear
from
it, Doc.
heaven upon the place.
All right, listen.
It is twice blessed.
Phonograph?
It blesseth him that gives, and
Is that
him
her,
that
George?
takes.
I guess so.
'Tis mightiest in the mightiest.
Portia speaks.
It becomes a throned monarch better than his
Sorry,
crown.
Matt, 10 years ago.
I said shut up. This makes me cry. You understand? Yeah, so what do? I'm crying, so yakata. If you got no appreciation, shut up.
The quality of mercy is not strange. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. Blessed him that gives.
Excuse me, but the
It is mightiest in the mightiest.
Well, somebody's got to answer that thing.
Better than his crown.
Hello?
Maybe a call from my
For
office.
the love of horses, will you all please
From Miss
shut up?
Stewart, from New York, long distance.
She don't know anybody in New York. Hang up. They got no appreciation anyway.
Wait a minute. How dare you?
Flora, baby.
Jake, you shut up! Give me that telephone.
Yeah, here you are, Miss Stewart.
Yes. Hello. Operator, I'm so sorry.
Will you please tell your party in New York that Miss Flora Stewart caught cold in a Turkish bath? There's a dear girl. Just say that she's thrown in the towel until Christmas. Well, this looks like the birth of a nation.
Miss Stewart, my name is...
Never mind. Doctor, what are you doing here? Get out.
Well, now, Flora, for heaven's sake, we haven't seen each other since your big tour.
And absence makes you so much fonder. Now go quack at somebody else. I'm busy.
But you're not well either, I noticed last night when we met on the street. I'm sorry, my dear, but you're way past a checkup. Now, don't push me.
I'm fine. I'm perfect. There's nothing wrong at all with me.
You're worried, upset. You look awful. Excuse
Maybe
me, but...
you can talk to your wife like that, but not to me. Go on, darling. Go on! Go on! You know that mortician's understudy has the nerve to think I should give up the stage. Me! It's like asking Grant to give up his tomb. Jake? Jake! Where is he? Where'd he go?
If you mean that guy who cries and whose face you slapped, I don't think he liked it.
He walked into the other room. What is it, a bar?
The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from my hand.
He probably could use a drink. Who is Jake, your husband?
My husband's name is Kenneth. Jake is my agent for 25 years. But don't look that up. He's in love with me. He's a fool. So is my husband. But I mean in love with me, not a fool. And I love him, my husband. And they all worry about me, but he doesn't mind if I slap his face. Jake doesn't. He just likes my phonograph records.
Well, look, Miss Stewart.
I know you're George Valentine, and I'm all upset, and you're here to straighten everything out, all this confusion, and... You, dear.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm Claire Brooks. Mr. Valentine and I work together.
Oh. Well, what are you looking so serious for? Eat, drink, and be merry. I thought I might go to work on him myself, that's all. Darling, don't worry.
Now, slow down, will you? I'm trying to get it straight. You've been threatened, blackmailed, your secretary said.
Yes, a very husky voice, quite a cloak and dagger. He's phoned every night for 3 nights running. You'll see for yourself maybe later on.
Any connection between those calls and the one you just had from New York? The one you wouldn't answer?
What? Oh, no. No, that's different. I started my tour 6 months ago in New York. That was just somebody I met there. This other voice is from town, I'm sure, and only a man could open the window like that, don't you think?
Do what?
Well, to break the records.
Records? Please, Miss Stewart, start at the beginning.
Well, some of the records I've made of my performances on stage are master records. They're not commercial, just originals, the only ones. And 3 nights ago, someone broke in the window to my study, ransacked things, and took one out and broke it all over the rug.
Go on.
Well, Blue Swan was the first one. That's a play 5 years ago. It only lasted a couple of weeks. Then it was Alice Adams. I just tried that for the first time on tour. And then last night it was my recording.
Wait a minute. You mean every night a different record is broken and nothing else is touched?
No. And then I get a phone call and the voice says, unless you leave $10,000 tonight in the study, I'll break every record you have. And I'll tell everybody what I know about...
Well, tell what he knows about what?
Well, you don't think I'm going to tell you. Really, darling, I don't know you that well yet.
Oh, for the love of... Lady, can't you stop acting for once?
But you're here to catch him. You're not here to write my biography.
Well, Deuce, for my money, you can either tell
Stop
or...
it! Don't yell at me. You're here now. You'll help. I'm not the detective. I'm just so frightened I can't think straight. You can look around. You'll find some clues.
Lady, you're going to stick around and give them to me.
Oh, I've got such a headache. I can't even see you. It's my house. I'll do what I like. I want to lie down and forget you. All of it. Leave me alone!
When is a case not a case? When you don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at the study where those records are kept.
Do you ever see so many crazy people?
Well, maybe that's how we clear the air, Brooksy. Be a little crazy ourselves. Door's locked.
Locked?
Listen.
Well, there must be another door around through the sunroom. Oh, hello, Mr. Valentine. I didn't realize I left the catch on.
Are you the secretary who wrote us, Betty Robinson?
Yes, that's me. I'm just doing some work in here. Do you, smoke cigars while you work? What? Oh. I guess Miss Stewart wanted you to see the records that were broken.
Yeah, sure. Stuff this prowler breaks up.
She saved all the pieces, put them in an envelope. I thought you might have fingerprints or something.
I doubt it. Those records look more pulverized than stepped on. This the cabinet they were taken out of?
Oh, yes, right there.
Mm-hmm. Say, how often do you water those zinnias out there?
What? Oh, out the window. There's a gardener every day. The beds are pretty.
Yeah. Wet right now, all right. Only no marks on the rug.
I don't understand.
Well, this is a window, isn't it? Mysterious man who comes in from the outside. Easy enough to force, all right?
Yes, it's been found open, or it was this morning.
Only he makes no tracks on the rug. And out there he'd have to stand in the wet flower bed.
The window could be left open from the inside so that it would only look like something.
Oh, no. If you think there's anyone inside this house...
I don't think anything yet, Miss Robinson, except that maybe you could use some Kleenex.
What? Here, honey, not your lipstick, your mascara. You've been crying, haven't you?
No. You're here just to do something for Miss Stewart.
Okay. And you're here to say nothing.
I've been her secretary for 6 years. She's the most wonderful person in the world.
Why drag that in? Because you've been packing a suitcase?
Yes. Yes, I'm leaving for a little vacation. It has absolutely nothing to do with why you're here. You can take care of her now.
I have a headache. I told you I want to be left alone. Miss Brooks,
I have a
him.
job, so I'm doing it, Miss Stewart. I'm asking who smokes cigars.
What?
Nice, fancy cigars from the smell of them.
It's Jake, isn't it, that agent of yours?
Oh, it's my husband. Jake's never smoked in his life.
Oh, your husband, huh? I'd like to meet him.
Oh, he's around someplace. A big, shaggy poodle who adores me.
Uh-huh. How does he get along with your secretary?
Her? Darling, have you seen her? Nothing but a little fox terrier trails me around with such a worshipping look. Why? I'm so tired I don't think very straight.
I'm not going to bother you with why anything, Miss Stewart.
Oh, but I'm scared. Someone's threatened me. I hired you to come...
We're only trying to understand your household.
This is so simple. It's blackmail.
Sure. Somebody from the outside.
The people in this house have nothing to do with anything. They love me.
But it must be a little hard living with a person who's been as famous as you have. Already a legend. Being married to you, working for you.
Already a legend. Of course, I'm peculiar. I'm selfish. There's nothing in the world as important as my work. And I've been working so hard. I've done nothing but work. Every minute for the last 6 months. It was my own tour. I even organized and backed it myself. What's the matter?
That stuff in your lap. What were you doing when we came in?
Cleaning a gun. Here, you see.
What in the name of... Sister, give me that thing before...
Oh, no, you don't, darling. Maybe it's got a bullet in it. How do you know?
Now, look, lady.
Mr. Valentine, I'm frightened. I want to have a gun.
Not the way you handle it, sister. Now, come on.
Also, I'm too much for you, am I? My blackmail is too much for you, so you're afraid of my case. Well, baby, you can just...
I said, give me that gun.
No!
Okay, lady, okay. Now, nobody's hurt. And you still have your little toy.
Of course I have, darling. I still have everything. Call me a legend, will you? Baby, you better be careful. The next time this little toy will spit right in your eye.
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. Listen to the difference. Yes, now you can actually hear authentic scientific proof of the difference between new RPM motor oil and premium-type motor oils, as designated by the American Petroleum Institute. Auto engines are equipped with irradiated piston rings, and during operation, minute particles of radioactive metal wear off the rings. Geiger counters are thus able to detect the amount of wear actually taking place. Listen now as the Geiger counters click off the difference. First, the low wear rate of the new RPM. Now the much faster wear rate of conventional oil. Now new RPM again. You have just heard authentic scientific proof that new RPM motor oil cuts in half the wear rate of critical engine parts, doubles the life of the average auto engines between major overhauls due to lubrication. Proved in the laboratory and checked out in severe road service, new RPM motor oil is sold with a money-back guarantee of satisfaction. Ask for it at standard stations and independent Chevron gas stations where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. And now, back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. The greatest actress in the world, Flora Stewart. But she's scared to death of a mysterious stranger, a blackmailer, who has been breaking the master records of her famous performances and threatens to continue until she pays him $10,000. Well, if your name is George Valentine, you're convinced that there's a lot going on in Miss Stewart's strange household besides just blackmail, particularly when she pulls a gun on you.
Look at the great detective.
Okay, lady, so you win round one.
Round one, throw in the ammonia, folks. Oh, go on, get out of here. You're not big enough to help me. All you can do is try to pad your part with guesses about things that don't matter. Well, darling, ta-ta.
Oh, turn it off, Deucer. Maybe I don't slap back, but I got bad news for you. I'm staying.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Valentine. And it's not true what you think. People do love me. Like I've loved them.
Oh, sure, lady. I love you, too. Don't you listen to the critics. I think you're still the greatest actress in the world. You act all the time.
Yes, full of cobwebs, isn't it? Whole house full of cobwebs.
Look, Mr. Stewart, I wanted to meet you because...
Mr. Stewart? Oh, listen to me, laughing as though it were a joke by this time. I'm Kenneth, yes, but Kenneth McLaughlin. Do you have a drink?
No, thanks.
Do you expect her to take my name?
Well...
Ever hear of Aphrodite's husband? Sarah Bernhardt's? Go on, drink this stuff. It's important.
How much of it do you drink every day?
Enough to remember the name McLaughlin. Don't think anything of that. Been married 18 years, and I adore her. Everybody does. Can't help themselves.
Sure. Keep telling it to yourself.
What do I say now? I beg your pardon?
No, you tell me what you do for a living.
Oh, foolish boy.
Okay, so she's the moneymaker. She give you an allowance?
No, I can't be insulted.
Oh, stop smiling or be goaded into saying anything?
You ask about my wife, Mr. Valentine. What's there to say? She's been on tour for 6 months. Some crazy idea of doing every part she's ever done, and for good measure, the one she's left out. A galloping ingenue. I've barely seen her. Why are you here today? I don't know that. Why won't she see me today? Why anything? Who cares? Have a drink. Of course she's insufferable, selfish, but so what? Have a drink.
That's right, Buster. Tell me how it is to be tied to the great lady. How she never thinks of you the way Betty does.
What?
You know, Betty, nice little secretary who says she loves the great actress, too, only she's leaving.
Excuse me, Mr.
Don't tell me you didn't know she was going. Not after that little scene you must have had in the study when you ducked out just before we came in.
Oh, get out of my way.
She's gone, I tell you. You hate your wife, don't you?
Shut up, you fool.
She lives for herself and her career and nobody else. And all the time, right under her nose, you and her secretary...
Valentine, I'm warning you that...
Mr. Valentine, come here.
Oh, now what? All right, what is it, Betty?
Another phonograph record.
Huh?
I was just on my way out. I was walking through here.
Yeah, well, you're not leaving now. Here, let me see.
It was all in pieces, on the rug, the same place as the others. That person's been here again.
And the window drape shoved aside again. Only this time the window's closed.
What?
Yeah, you heard me, so you're not leaving. Nobody's leaving.
Mr. Valentine.
I shoved matches in the frame the last time I was in here. The window can't be opened. But somebody tried awful hard. Here, you see? Handprints all over the top of the glass.
Inside?
Yeah, sure, of course. I thought so before, now I know it. So we're going to find out whose prints those are. Which one of the people inside this house has been trying to frighten Flora Stewart out of $10,000?
You ever swindle blood out of a turnip, Valentine? I'm business manager to a bunch of back taxes, that's all. And that Betty, if she had half a brain, would have quit long ago. She hasn't been paid in 4 months.
Clear it up, will you, Jake?
Okay, I'll clear it up. This star client of mine is flat broke.
Flora Stewart? Oh, now, wait a minute. She used to make a fortune. And that tour she
Financing herself in all the parts she wanted to do. Playing the city she thought liked her, whether the houses were good or not. Promoting herself with producers. I tell you, friend, it's cleaned out everything she had left.
A great business manager you must be.
But, Montague, it is not hand,
So you
nor
still
foot,
don't understand anything.
nor arm, nor face, nor any
I'm
other
a sucker.
part belonging
Yeah.
to a man.
Yeah, soft-hearted Jake.
Some other name.
But it's there.
What
Can't you hear it?
name?
In that old record?
That which we call a rose. By any other name would smell as
She makes
sweet.
me cry.
So Romeo
Sure, I love her. She tears people apart. She's off in that world of her own. She can't help it. You think she gets two pins for what happens to her? But am I supposed to be a watchdog forever? I can't order her around. Nobody can. Nobody ever could. Oh, why don't you get smart and go home?
Brooksy, I'm just beginning to realize what this is all about.
George, that was a shot! Oh, George, no. It's Flora.
Yeah. Dead, Brooksy. She's dead. Oh, brother, see it all backwards until it's too late. Get a client you can't understand and then let her be killed.
It must have been her own gun that was used. It's gone.
She was scared to death. She really was frightened, Brooksy. Sick and upset.
Oh, George, stop it. She'd wanted protection. She would have
Hey,
said
wait a minute,
so.
hold it.
Hey, what happened? You hear that?
Yeah, I hear it, Jake. Car starting. A car starting. Get out of the way. Well, thanks. You didn't run over me. All right, Betty, get out.
Stay where you are.
Come on.
Stand still, I said. I've got a gun.
I know you have. Miss Stewart's.
Get away from me. Don't touch me. I killed her.
Betty.
Yes, I killed her.
So now what are you going to do, Betty?
Suppose you just take it
She
easy.
wouldn't let him go, and I killed her. He loved her and hated her for 18 years, and I killed her. I loved her, too.
You know, I'm getting a little sick of all the emotions being spilled in this house. Just because you lived with an actress doesn't mean you have to
I
imitate
killed
her.
her, don't you understand? If you come one step closer, I'll kill myself.
Yeah, look who's coming, Betty. The boyfriend himself.
It's all the excitement. I was sound asleep.
Betty says she killed your wife.
What? Flora?
Yeah, that's right. Little Betty here managed to wrestle her gun away. Can you imagine? And then with one shot, she... All right, sister, give me that gun. That's better. Now, you don't have to pretend. You don't have to cover for him.
Betty, what in
Hold
heaven's
it, friend,
name?
hold it. All right, now, Jake, tell me something. Did Flora carry life insurance?
Huh? Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, quite a bit. Took it out just recently. It was the only way I could get it to save. Why?
Because after we heard the shot, Betty, it took us a little time to find out where it came from. But you were upstairs already. What did you do? Run in there, see the body, see a gun, and think Kenneth had actually killed her?
Yes.
With me in the house and Jake? Didn't you notice the cotton wadding, the cleaning fluid, the gun oil?
That's right, George.
Yeah. If I found a setup like that, I'd be more inclined to think her death was an accident. All right, now come on inside. We're going to phone back to New York. Okay, thanks, operator. Keep on trying to locate that party in New York, will you? All right, I know it's awful sudden. I know you all loved her a lot, no matter how you talk. She really tore people apart, didn't she?
But an accident right in the middle of all that blackmail business. Oh, George, no, it's too convenient.
Yes, Valentine, if you don't explain
I'm just guessing, Jake, adding 2 and 2. In the first place, that blackmail thing. She put that up herself. She must have. Look at the records that were so carefully broken. Alice Adams, the part of an adolescent girl, just recorded this year on tour. She might have been able to play that part well 30 years ago. And then Blue Swan, a flop that lasted 2 weeks. And then this last one, a turkey, you said, don't you see? All her recent performances. All her bad performances. She broke the records herself to get rid of them.
But why would she call you?
Well, she wanted me here because it was all phony. It was all an act. And she made a big point of having me see her cleaning a gun, handling it clumsily.
She wanted us for witnesses. Wanted us to testify she died accidentally.
That's right, Brooksy. And I don't think I need to kick myself. She would have done it anyway. Yeah, the big, selfish actress, so self-centered. But she knew she wrecked lives. And the rest of it wasn't an act. She was frightened, all right. But she had to keep on being a star.
She was sick. The doctor said she'd have to give up the stage. It was her whole life. She had to keep working.
Feeble, flat gesture, wasn't it? But maybe she figured it was the least she could do for all of you. Yeah, that's right. Make her death look like it was an accident. So the insurance companies wouldn't refuse to pay off on suicide.
Oh,
She went on tour to play all the parts she used to like, burning the candle at both ends for the last big try, financing herself, the great actress. But I noticed her biggest successes were in the past.
She still was great, Sonny.
You sure about that? Oh, there's my call. Hello?
Hello, Miss Stewart.
Who is this, please? I know all about Miss Stewart. At least I think I do.
Well, tell her it's James Sharon.
James Sharon?
The producer? Give me that phone.
Hold it, Jake, hold it.
Wait a minute. How about you taking a message? Maybe it'll be easier that way.
Well, nothing is easy, friend, but go ahead.
Well, look, tell her I love her. I love her, and I'm a heel. She's been haunting me for years to put her in something big, but I can't anymore. I wrote her I could get her a small part and would phone her for an answer. For a slap in the face. She knows the truth as well as I do. What does she want to make me suffer for? I love her.
Why don't you say it straight, Mr. Sharon?
Candles all burned out, my friend. The ingenue's finished. She's through.
She had to quit the stage. Maybe she could have even done that. The stage had already quit her. She didn't have any life outside the theater.
That's right, Brooks. She'd been slipping for years, and she must have known it, too. That last disastrous tour was the payoff.
Yeah, they all knew it. They could never admit it to anyone.
Yeah, particularly Jake in there. Wagon hitched to a burnt-out star.
Yeah, Flora wasn't all selfish, George. Trying to pull a third-act curtain like that. If it hadn't been for Betty interfering...
The accidental death stunt might have gone through. That insurance idea to help the people she'd hurt, clumsy as it was, might have worked.
George, it doesn't make any difference. They don't care about the money. Don't blame yourself for having to expose them.
Yeah, I know. Jake's still in there beating himself. She really had these people tied up in knots, didn't she?
Helen's cheek, but not her heart. Cleopatra's majesty, Atlanta's better part. Sad Lucretia's modesty. Thus,
How do you explain a woman like her, George?
I don't know, see. Maybe you don't.
To have the touch of dearest
Listen.
pride. Heavenward, that she these gifts should have, and I to live and die her slave.
Listen
Listen to the difference. In a few seconds, you'll hear Geiger counters measuring automobile engine wear. The engines are equipped with irradiated piston rings, which make it possible for the Geiger counters to detect wear as it occurs. You'll hear authentic scientific proof that new RPM motor oil cuts in half the wear rate of critical engine parts, doubles the life of the average auto engine between major overhauls due to lubrication. First, let's listen to the Geiger counter slowly click off the low wear rate of new RPM. Now, the much faster wear rate of a premium type oil as designated by the American Petroleum Institute. Now, new RPM again. You have just heard Geiger counters clicking off the scientific proof that new RPM motor oil is years ahead.
Yes, years ahead. New RPM doubles engine life between major overhauls due to lubrication. Try it. Sold with a money-back guarantee of satisfaction at independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard Oil Company of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Virginia Gregg as Brooksy. Let George Do It is written by David Victor and Jackson Gillis and directed by Don Clark. Jeanette Nolan was heard as Flora, Charlotte Lawrence as Betty, Sidney Miller as Jake, Larry Dobkin as Kenneth, and Stanley Farrar as Sheriff. The music is composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, another one of these Let George Do It with a very complicated set of characters and a very tragic overall story. The first time I heard it, I definitely was not expecting the ending. The only thing I think that would have made this more interesting is if you'd had one of the true great famous actresses playing this role of Flora. But overall, pretty good piece of drama here. All right, well, we've added another show to the list of programs we hope to eventually do. And on that list is Man from Homicide. A pretty solid, kind of hard-boiled show. Not quite as good as Broadway as might be seen as playing off that. For those of you who have the app or the premium site, you're going to get a sample Man from Homicide. All right, well, and you just download that. Well, that will actually do it for today. We will be back tomorrow with Sherlock Holmes, and next Wednesday, another episode of Let George Do It. Well, this episode is brought to you by the support of our listeners. Thank you so much for your support. And I want to say thank you to Mary, who sent along a donation, as well as to Teresa. Thank you so much. And I believe I said thank you to Aaron on the last show, but thank you everyone so much for your support. Now it is time for today's episode, Death is a Golden Arrow.
From New York City, the makers of Clipper Craft Clothes for Men and 1,036 leading retail stores from coast to coast present the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Tonight's adventure, Death is a Golden Arrow. And so here we are, as usual, in front of Dr. Watson's cheerful fireplace. There's a hint of spring in the softness of the air, but a fire still feels mighty comfortable after sundown, eh, Dr. Watson?
Right, Mr. Harris.
It's rather like a man who wants to show off his new spring suit, but still hasn't managed to do without his overcoat.
Well, if they're both Clippercraft, chances are one is as impressive as the other, Dr. Watson.
Right you are.
And next Sunday is Easter. And because Clippercraft prices are so low, this week's a good time to buy your Clippercraft suit and topcoat. These low prices, you know, are the result of the unique Clippercraft plan that concentrates the buying power of 1,036 of the finest stores across the nation. It's a year-round operation that results in substantial economies in manufacturing and distribution costs. It puts money in your pocket, even in these days of high prices, through the tremendous savings that result. And this is important, too, at a friendly local independent store, a store you can trust. Fresh new assortments of spring Clippercraft clothes, including long-wearing worsteds, are ready now at your Clippercraft dealers. Beautifully tailored, finely styled, expensive-looking suits at only $40 and $45. Top coats in fine coverts and worsted gabardine at only $40 and $45, and sport jackets at only $26.50. Seeing is believing. Simply compare Clippercraft with clothes selling for many dollars more. And now, Dr. Watson, what about tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure?
Yes, it concerns a weekend Holmes and I spent at Bowman's Knock among the Toxophilites.
What Olites?
Toxophilites, Mr. Harris, are gentlemen addicted to the not-so-gentle sport of archery.
Oh, you mean the boys who play around with bows and arrows.
I suppose you might express it that way. Bowman's Knock was the country home of Sir Timothy Fletcher, who was at that time president of the Royal Toxophilites Society. The Prince of Wales, of course, was its patron.
Oh, naturally.
However, he wasn't present at this particular house party. Besides Holmes and myself, there were only 4 other guests. Major and Mrs. Cheltenham, Professor Philpotts, and a South American millionaire, Senor Juan Vendrigo. Little did I think when I first made their acquaintance on Sir Timothy's shooting green that before the next sunrise I should see one of them dead as a doornail.
Well, it sounds as if your Toxophi, whatever you call them, took their sport seriously, Dr. Watson.
Yes, a bit too seriously, Mr. Harris. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon in early spring when Holmes and I alighted from our train at Helmsley-on-Wilton, which is the station for Bowman's Knock. Sir Timothy Fletcher had come to meet us in a dog cart drawn by a handsome cob.
Doctor, I thought a cob was a male swan.
In sporting circles, Mr. Harris, a cob generally refers to a small, stocky horse having a high, stylish leg action.
Well, then, a dog cart is not drawn by dogs.
Certainly not. A dog cart's a very, as you'd say, a snappy 2-wheel conveyance with seats placed back to back.
Doesn't sound particularly comfortable to me.
Oh, this mechanized age. It wasn't supposed to be comfortable. It was dashing.
Oh.
Well, as I was saying before being certain interruptions, our host piled us and our somewhat battered assortment of luggage into the cart, and off we started. The birds were singing, the sun was warm and gentle, the trees were covered with tender green foliage. Only Sir Timothy seemed at odds with nature.
Confound it, Holmes, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. There's something brewing, something nasty.
We might have known, Watson, that Sir Timothy hadn't invited us merely for a bucolic weekend.
Holmes, you know dashed well. If you had nothing but the ordinary country house party to look forward to, you wouldn't have accepted my invitation.
Got you that time, Holmes.
Yes, I gathered from your notes, Sir Timothy, that things don't seem to be entirely placid at Bowman's Knock. That seems to be the difficulty.
It's that confounded Spaniard, Juan Vendrigo. We should never have invited that bloated millionaire to join the Royal Toxopholite Society.
Why did you?
We needed new equipment. It's expensive, and he's filthy rich and a dash good shot besides, blast him. However, he insists on shooting for high stakes, worse luck. We're all heavily indebted to it.
Well, sounds to me as if it had been cheaper to buy your own equipment in the first place.
It undoubtedly would, Dr. Watson. Oh, most of us haven't lost more than we can afford, I suppose, but unfortunately Major Cheltenham has gone off the deep end. He's the crack shot of the woodman of Arden.
Oh, I see. A rival society of archers.
Exactly. He'd never been beaten until Senor Vendrigo came along. They're fairly evenly matched. Vendrigo has better direction, although the Major has more pull and distance. Well, it seems that last Monday, Senor Vendrigo went down to Meriden, where the woodmen hold their meetings. In the course of an afternoon's shooting, Major Cheltenham managed to lose a large sum of money, which he could ill afford.
And I suppose he insisted on a return match.
He did, the numbskull. Senor Vendrigo invited him to a return match at our shooting grounds, which, as you know, are situated in Regent's Park. Professor Philpotts was invited to keep score.
Oh, you don't mean Professor Winsgate Philpotts, the eminent physicist?
I do indeed. He's an exceptionally fine shot. His aim is practically infallible. If it went for the poor fellow's hunched back and his consequent inability to draw to a point over 38 pounds, well, he'd be the greatest archer in Europe.
Oh, here.
You must forgive Watson if he looks slightly confused, Sir Timothy. His trusty service revolver is the only lethal weapon he understands.
And you, I suppose, know what Sir Timothy is talking about.
Quite. The power to draw an arrow to the point means the measure of pull necessary to draw the bowstring to the position from which the arrow is released is measured in pounds. The power required to draw an ordinary bow for a man ranges from 40 to 60 pounds. Women's bows, of course, can be drawn by a power of from 24 to 32 pounds.
Oh, that means, I suppose, that the ladies can't shoot as great a distance as the men.
Brilliant deduction, my dear Watson. You're coming along. Pretty soon I shall have to look to my laurels.
Oh, go to blazes.
As I was saying, Professor Philpotts was chosen as scorer for the match. As president of the club, I was naturally on hand to see that everything went off without a hitch. These grudge matches are often quite tricky, you know.
Grudge match?
Oh, yes. Didn't I mention that Senor Vendrigo had been rather obviously attentive to Mrs. Cheltenham? And the Major doesn't like it.
Interesting, Watson.
Well, that rather depends upon Mrs. Cheltenham, I should say.
She's a charming little thing. I can't say I blame her for being flattered by the Senor. Her husband treats her abominably. But that's neither here nor there. It was agreed that the match should consist of a York round.
Yes, for gentlemen, Watson, the York round consists of 6 dozen arrows at 100 yards, 4 dozen at 80 yards, and 2 dozen at 50 yards.
By Jove, and each time the would-be Robin Hood shoots his silly little arrow, he has to use from 40 to 50 pounds pressure. I say, that's quite a bit of exercise.
Contrary to the common belief, Watson, archery is a rather rugged sport. But go on with the story, Sir Timothy.
It was a glorious afternoon for the match. Sun not too bright, the air as still as a millpot. Philpotts and I were arranging the arrows close to the south hedge, when suddenly from the other side of the bushes we heard 2 voices raised in a rather, nasty argument.
My advice to you, my dear Major, is to, cut down on the consumption of alcohol, or you will not be able to see the target, let alone hit the goal.
Mind your own business, you dirty yellow
Gently,
liver.
Major, gently. Do not make me to lose my temper, or I shall refuse to shoot the match.
Go ahead. What's it to me?
Only this. If you do not win back what you have lost to me, you must pay what you already owe. But that you cannot do. You would have to go into bankruptcy. And if you go into bankruptcy, you will be obliged to resign from the army in disgrace. No.
Why, you dirty yellow
You
liver.
have said that once already. To me, the repetition is offensive. It is only from the goodness of my heart, remember, that I give you the opportunity to win back your losses. What can I gain from the match?
What do you mean?
You have no money to wager. You have already lost that. You have no property you can mortgage. There is only one thing that still belongs to you of any value whatsoever.
What's that?
Your charming wife, of course.
Leave my wife out of this.
Oh, do not be alarmed, my dear Major. I do not wish to marry the lady. In my country, we do not believe in divorce. No, we will make other arrangements.
What are you getting at?
I suggest, merely suggest, mind you, that should you lose the match...
Which isn't likely. There's no win today. I never miss when it's still.
I say, should you lose, you will arrange to neglect your wife sometime this weekend, when we are all guests at Bowman's Knock.
You think I'd stand by and see any man make advances to my wife?
Oh, heaven forbid. I merely suggest I shall we say, visit Mrs. Cheltenham. Surely, if you have confidence in your wife and your ability as an archer, what can you possibly lose?
It's outrageous, eh, Holmes? Of course, I suppose the Major refused to go on with the match.
How could he, Watson?
I had a good mind to call off the match myself, Mr. Holmes, until Professor Philpotts pointed out that if we took any cognizance of the matter, everyone would know we'd been eavesdropping, which would have been embarrassing all around, don't you know?
Very.
Moreover, the Major and Senor Vendrigo would have probably gone off and shot the match somewhere else without proper supervision.
Unthinkable. What happened?
The match was nip and tuck all the way. Senor Vendrigo had a slight advantage at the beginning.
Due no doubt to the Major's use of spirituous liquors.
Quite, but by and by, as he became more sober, his aim became absolutely deadly. Moreover, as the afternoon wore on, Senor Vendrigo began to tire.
And the Major didn't?
The Major, my dear Holmes, is an ox. Well, believe it or not, when it came to the final shot, the score was absolutely even. Vendrigo shot first and hit the gold.
The gold, that's a bullseye, Watson. Did the Major equal the shot?
They were now shooting at 50 yards. It shouldn't have been too difficult. I tell you, my heart was in my mouth, and I could see the sweat pouring down Philpotts' face. But just as the Major drew his arrow home, Senor Vendrigo sneezed.
Dashed unsporting. Well, of course, the arrow went wide of the mark.
No, Dr. Watson. If it had done so, I should have insisted the Major take the shot over. But he hit a red. Vendrigo claimed the Major had already released the arrow when he sneezed. Otherwise, the shot must have gone much wider off the mark. No, we were obliged to give Vendrigo the match. He won by a single point.
Under doubtful circumstances. Is the Major a man to take things lying down?
Why do you think I asked you down to Bowman's Knock, Mr. Holmes? I'm expecting an explosion, and I think I can promise it won't be nice. Suppose we alight here, gentlemen, and let the gatekeeper drive the luggage up to the house. Here you are, Rogers.
Yes, sir.
Tell Parsons the bags go in the tower bedroom.
Yes, sir. Get up, you.
Now then, we'll walk across the park, Holmes. I want you and Dr. Watson to meet the rest of the house party. I left them clout shooting on the south green.
Clout? What sort of bird or animal is a clout?
It's neither, Watson. A clout is a small white target placed near the ground.
Right. Clout shooting is an informal variety of archery. Don't hold with it myself, but it gives Major Cheltenham a chance to show off his confounded Norman bow. It's an atrocity, if you ask me. Nearly 6.5 feet long. And would you believe it? It takes over 70 pounds to draw the silly thing. It's been in the Cheltenham family for years. The Major claims it goes back to the Norman invasion and probably belonged to William the Conqueror.
Yes, I believe he was supposed to have had a bow that no one else could draw.
It couldn't be the same bow, Holmes, not after all these years.
Quite.
I beg you, don't say that to the Major. It would be sacrilege.
Tell me, Sir Timothy, how is your party getting on? Any signs of violence so far?
None whatever. They arrived in a group by the early morning train. Apparently the trip down had been completely amicable.
Well, maybe the storm has blown over.
I doubt it. The Major's neck is puffed up like a poisoned pup, and Senor Vendrigo keeps tapping incessantly with the fingers of his left hand.
Both, I take it, danger signals.
Right. We're nearly there. Just around the next hedge.
Duck, Watson.
But I say... Oh, confound it. Someone shot my hat off. Look, there it is. An arrow straight through it.
Lucky you were wearing your top hat, Watson. Fast is a call of warning. The golfer shouts 4, the archer calls fast.
Confound it! No one had any business to shoot in this direction. What silly fool...
Oh, dear, I do hope no one's hurt. I tried to stop the Major, but I'm afraid he's been drinking again.
And like a small boy with a snowball, he just couldn't resist a top hat.
Holmes, that's not very funny. I might have been killed.
Oh, no, I don't think so. My husband is really an excellent shot.
Then you, I gather, are Mrs. Cheltenham.
Yes.
Sorry, where are my manners? Mrs. Cheltenham, may I present Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson?
How do you do?
Not Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I'm afraid so, Mrs. Cheltenham.
But it's nothing to be alarmed about, madam. He's really quite harmless, you know.
To anyone who stays on the right side of the law.
Ah, here come the others.
Good Lord. I made a hash of your hat, old man. Sorry. Yes. But you'll admit it did fly through the air like an eagle. A golden eagle.
At least this time it is not the Latin exuberance which is to blame, Sir Timothy.
No, British lack of judgment, I'm afraid.
Gentlemen, this is Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson. Major Cheltenham, Senor Vendrigo.
How do you do?
Oh, yes, Professor Philpott.
As usual, I am the postscript.
Which so frequently carries the gist of the communication, Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. My ego could do with a bit of bolstering.
These two have been putting it over me all afternoon. I can't hope to equal their archery scores, you know.
Why don't you give up, Philpotts, and shoot with the women?
Arthur.
Major, really?
Oh, do not feel badly, Professor. Even I cannot draw that great hulking bow he so brags about. It is fit for nothing but to kill cows.
That's about enough.
Hush, Arthur, please.
Huh? Oh, well. I can't blame you chaps for being jealous, I suppose. Here, have a look at this bow, Mr. Holmes. Ever seen its equal?
It is rather remarkable, Major Cheltenham. I've certainly never seen a self-bow this size.
Yes. It consists of a single piece of yew, as flexible as the day it was made. If you have the strength to draw it, of course.
Which you apparently have, Major.
That's right, I have. What's more, I'm the only one that has. Oh, but here, I'd best retrieve my arrow out of the doctor's hat.
Here, I say, you've torn my hat to shreds.
I'm sorry, but these arrows are valuable, you know. Can't use ordinary arrows with this bow. As you can see, these arrows are painted gold. The shaft is extra long and tipped with eagle feathers, and the cock feather is from a golden eagle. Oh, well, we best return to our mutton, Vendrigo, or we shall never finish our round by tea time.
Absolutely. It gives me not much time to prove, my dear Major, that there is more to archery than brute strength. Come along, Philpotts. At least you can keep accurate score.
Holmes, I don't like those people.
Not even Mrs. Cheltenham and the Professor?
Oh, I dare say they're harmless enough.
I wonder, Watson. I wonder.
You want to do a friend a real favor? Simply tell him to hurry to the store in your community that sells Clippercraft clothes. Where else can he find such remarkable quality at prices so exceptionally modest? He'll wonder how, in these days of high prices, such values, including beautifully tailored, long-wearing worsteds, are possible. The answer is the famous Clippercraft plan, concentrating the buying power of 1,036 of the nation's finest stores from coast to coast. The plan's the reason you get these wonderful, really costly-looking Clippercraft suits at only $40 and $45. Spring topcoats in fine coverts and worsted gabardine at only $40 and $45, and sport jackets at only $26.50. Yes, selling expensive clothes at inexpensive low prices at the nation's finest independent stores is the great big idea behind the Clippercraft plan. That's why men who know insist on Clippercraft clothes. So be sure to visit the Clippercraft store in your city.
These leading stores in the metropolitan area are proud to add their names to Clippercraft in your suits, topcoats, and sport jackets. In Manhattan, Saks 34th, Broadway at 34th. John Wanamaker Men's Stores, Broadway at 8th and 67 Liberty Street. In Brooklyn, Abraham and Strauss. In Newark, New Jersey, Boulevard Men's Shop, Kresge, Newark. And in Jamaica, the B&B Clothes Shop, 16408 Jamaica Avenue.
And now back to our story. Night has fallen. It is past midnight. Holmes and Watson are hiding in an upstairs closet.
I say, Holmes, why are we sitting here in this darkened linen closet? It's past midnight and my legs are getting cramped. If you must wait for an accident to happen, why not go back to our room where we can be at least comfortable?
Impossible, Watson. This closet has a much better view of Mrs. Cheltenham's door and the two corridors which approach it at right angles.
Just what you think is going to happen.
I don't know, confound it. Wait a minute. I hear steps on the front stairs. Sounds like the Major.
Because his steps are unsteady and you know he's been drinking. It doesn't take a genius to deduce that, Holmes.
I didn't say it did. Quiet. He's turned the corner. Here he comes.
He's stopped at his wife's door. His hand's on the knob.
No. He's changed his mind. He's gone on down the back corridor.
Holmes, did you notice that bulge in his pocket? It could have been a revolver, you know.
Or a bottle.
Now everyone's turned in except the South American. The The professor went upstairs directly after dinner. Mrs. Cheltenham and our host retired after we finished the third rubber of whist. Well, that was nearly 2 hours ago.
What arouses my curiosity, Watson, is why the Major retired down the back corridor.
Well, maybe he's gone to visit Professor Philpotts or Sir Timothy. They both have rooms somewhere along there. Maybe he felt hungry and slipped down the back stairs to the larder. I could do with a bit of cold chicken myself, come to think of it. Is that 12:30 or 1 o'clock, do you suppose?
What difference does it make? Hello. Someone else is sneaking up the front stairs.
I can't hear a thing.
He's tiptoeing. Yes. Here he comes.
It's Senor Vendrigo. Holmes, I don't like the look on his face. There's something evil, like a prowling beast.
Yes. He's stopping at Mrs. Cheltenham's door. He's looking up and down both corridors.
Now he's taken hold of the doorknob. Great Scott, Holmes, what happened? Vendrigo's pinned to the door, something sticking out of his back. It's a golden arrow.
Shut up, Watson, and come along.
What's happened?
Someone shot Vendrigo with one of the Major's arrows. He's dead, killed instantly.
The arrow is embedded over 2 inches in the solid oak of the door.
Could only have been my bow that made that shot. Clean through the man and into the door. Only an arrow from my bow has that strong a flight. It's gone home. The arrow's gone home. Hee hee.
Stop that laughing, you fool. You're drunk.
That is not laughing, Dr. Watson. It's the word of call of all archers from time immemorial. Hee hee. Hee hee.
Better let Dr. Watson give you another cup of coffee, Mrs. Cheltenham.
I don't need it, thank you, Mr. Holmes. I'm glad my husband shot that brute. I knew he wouldn't let him come into my room.
Now, my dear, we all realize there are extenuating circumstances. I'm sure the law won't punish him too severely. I hope you understand. I had to give him in charge.
I understand.
All the same, Sir Timothy, I think you were just a bit hasty in handing him over to that fool of a constable.
What do you mean?
It should have been obvious to a child of 4 that Major Cheltenham was too drunk to have made that neat a shot. Straight through the heart, wasn't it, Watson?
But it was his bow that was used. We found it at the end of the corridor. He's the only one that has the strength to draw it. Besides, he didn't deny he'd killed Vendrigo.
Again, he probably was too hazy to realize exactly what did happen. Oh, but here comes Philpotts. His cane sounds unusually staccato this morning. Good morning, Professor. You don't look as though you'd had too good a night.
I must admit that I didn't shut my eyes after I awakened and was informed what happened.
But you did manage to sleep through the murder.
Yes. Can't explain it. Usually such a light sleeper. Probably all that sun and fresh air yesterday. No, I won't have an egg, thank you. Just coffee. Can't face an egg this morning.
Yes. Committing a murder does take away the appetite. Doesn't it, Professor?
What do you mean?
I'm suggesting that you were the man who shot Senor Vendrigo at 1 last night.
With the Major's famous bow? I believe it's agreed that was the weapon used, Mr. Holmes.
Indubitably.
Then don't you see how ridiculous your statement is? That bow requires 70 pounds to draw it. I'm physically incapable of more than 45 pounds.
Using the ordinary or manual method, yes. However, there are other ways of exerting pressure besides pulling.
What are you suggesting?
It doesn't take an expert physicist like yourself to understand the value of leverage.
Well, what good would that do?
I suggest that the professor's cane would make an excellent lever. It has a very handy small crook at the upper end. By hooking that through the string and using, shall we say, the back of a chair or even the handle of your bedroom door as a fulcrum, all the professor had to do was press the weight of his body down against the cane, and the arrow could easily be drawn to the point and shot through a partly open door.
A very interesting theory, my dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes. But it takes more than theory to hang a man. It takes evidence.
I think I can provide that as well, Professor. You see, I noticed the drops of blood trickling down onto your left wrist when the constable was questioning you last night. A nasty gash, isn't it? Don't you think you'd be wise to let Dr. Watson dress it?
What's all this about, Holmes? I admit I don't understand a word you're saying.
Professor Philpotts does, however. Grab his arm, Watson, his forearm.
Right.
No, you don't. Oh!
Sorry. Orders. There you are, Holmes. Old jiu-jitsu comes in handy now and then.
Now, if you'll roll up your left sleeve.
Oh, no sooner said than... By Jove, I say. That is a nasty gash.
Yes. Professor Philpotts made only one mistake in his little plan to get rid of the two men he hated most in the world. The seigneur, to whom he owed money, and the major, who was always bully-ragging him. His mistake was that last night he forgot to put on a leather arm guard to shield his left arm from the stroke of the string after the discharge of the arrow. Any bow as powerful as the major's has a particularly vicious backlash, don't you know?
Well, Dr. Watson, that was certainly an exciting and instructive adventure. You know, I feel I know almost as much about archery as Robin Hood.
Well, that's not so vital, Mr. Harris. The important thing is you know all about Clippercraft clothes.
Well, thank you, Dr. Watson. I hope you profit as much from my dissertations on that subject as I do from yours.
Wait till you see me next week in my new Easter suit. I think you'll agree I'm your prize pupil.
And now, Dr. Watson, how about a word about next week's story?
With pleasure, Mr. Harris. Next week I'm going to tell you how I chased all over Europe trying to find a wealthy and lovely lady who had mysteriously disappeared, and how Holmes stepped in at the last moment and prevented a double funeral. We always call the story The Disappearance of Lady Frances Carfax.
The makers of Clippercraft Clothes and 1,036 leading stores from coast to coast have brought you another in the new series of broadcasts featuring the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Our stories are based upon the character of Sherlock Holmes created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sherlock Holmes is played by John Stanley, Dr. Watson by Alfred Shirley. The dramatizations are by Edith Miser. Sherlock Holmes is produced and directed by Basil Lochran, with special music by Albert Berman. If you don't know your Clippercraft dealer, write Clippercraft, 200 Fifth Avenue, New York City. Wouldn't you give a lot if Jimmy, the youngster next door, could be free from crutches and join in the ball game with the gang? Well, there's a way you can help Jimmy and all crippled kids by bringing services through Easter Seals today. Be sure to listen next Sunday to Sherlock Holmes in The Disappearance of Lady Frances Carfax. This is Cy Harris speaking for Clippercraft Clothes. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, I like this episode mainly because I like archery. Had an archery set a little bit when I was a kid. Haven't picked up a bow and arrow in about 15 years. I had thought about doing it recently, and it's just one of those things that I don't get around to. And I do have... Draw ranges seemed a little small. The big deal with this one was the 75-pound pole, which, while still pretty heavy today, is actually in the upper range for large frame men above 180 pounds in weight. And the figures for women definitely a lot smaller. I guess archery has changed a lot since the times of Sherlock Holmes. Alright, well now time for listener comments and feedback. A comment from Cheryl who says, loves Sherlock Holmes and great detectives. And then we received this email from Harry, who writes, I just finished your book, All I Needed to Know. I learned from Columbo. I really enjoyed the book. I plan to read more of your books, from Harry. Well, thanks so much, Harry. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And that should be available in other ebook formats later on this month. It's only been available for the Kindle through March 9th, but we're going to make it available for Nooks and in the EPUB format shortly. All right, well, that will do it for today. We will be back tomorrow with yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and then join us next Thursday for another episode of Sherlock Holmes. All right, well, I do want to encourage you. My book, All I Needed to Know I Learned from Columbo, is available on Amazon. We should also be, for your Kindle, and we should also be getting it out in other ebook formats shortly. And encourage you to pick up a copy of that. We take a look at 7 great detectives and their histories, and then some life lessons we can gather from them. It's fun. Ebook available for $1.99. Pick up your copy today. All right. Well, it's time for today's episode. This one we will definitely not be a rehearsal. It's the Rochester theft matter, and it's the Armed Forces Radio Services version. I should caution, the sound quality's not quite as good as I'd like, but we'll go ahead and do the best we can. All right. Well, here now is the Rochester theft matter.
A college education and a rewarding career. They're yours when you become a cadet at the Air Force Academy. The Academy is looking for qualified young men to become leaders of tomorrow's Air Force. You'll receive 4 years of higher education and a commission in the United States Air Force. If you're a high school senior right now, it'll pay you to check it out. Call the Academy liaison officer at an air base near you.
Raz. Johnny Dollar.
New York Police Department calling. Mr. Dollar, will you accept the charges?
Yeah, put them on.
Just a moment, please. Ready with your call to Hartford, Connecticut. Go ahead.
Hello, Dollar? That's right.
This is Sergeant Papish, robbery. I have a notation here. You're the one to contact in the case that came up. Allied Adjustment Bureau?
Well, I've done a lot of work for him. What's it about, Sergeant?
Well, we've recovered a mink coat you were looking for about 6 months ago.
Oh?
Yeah, stolen from a party named Jacoby in Rochester. The Jacobys are in Europe right now, but the furrier's already identified it as the one he sold to them.
Jacoby? Rochester?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember. It was insured for $5,000. There's some other things taken in the same haul. A watch, rings, bracelets.
That's the job. So far, we just have the coat and the girl who was wearing it.
What does she say?
Nothing. So far, she's got a couple of bullet holes in her.
Maybe I better get down there, Sergeant.
Room 212, Sergeant Papish.
Right.
Hi, fellas. Care to join me in a quick look at the past? Okay, here goes. Back around 1890, Charles Dudley Warner, who was editor of the Hartford Courant, wrote in an editorial, "Everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it." Well, maybe no one did in 1890, but someone definitely has since then. Our United States weatherman. He's quite a busy gentleman who works for the Department of Commerce. His job is to read thermometers, barometers, anemometers, and other assorted meters, which forecast weather conditions so the rest of us will know what to plan or what not to plan. Like hanging out the wash or going to a baseball game. Information about weather conditions is also given to aircraft pilots and ship captains so they can plan their flights or cruises accordingly. Of course, they need more than just weather data, and the Commerce Department gives them what they need. For the pilots, the department issues aviation charts and maps and sees to it that air markers are laid out so that the pilots can find their way easily and safely. For the ship captains, the Commerce Department issues nautical charts and tide tables to indicate when and where it will be safe to navigate their ships. The department also inspects the ships to see that they're in perfect operating condition and issues licenses for the operating of the ships. So the next time you look up at the sky and wonder what kind of a day it's going to be, the thought might also cross your mind that many lives and valuable cargo carried by American planes and ships are depending on the United States weatherman who is also looking at the sky.
account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Allied Adjustment Bureau, Markham Building, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Rochester theft matter. Expense account item 1, $1.65. Person-to-person collect call from Sergeant Papish, New York Police Department. Item 2, $32.56. Train fare and incidentals between Hartford and New York City after clearing authority to resume on the Jacoby case. It had been stalemated 6 months before when the Rochester police and I were unable to recover any part of the items stolen from the Jacoby residence. I arrived in New York at 1:35, dropped my bags off at the New Weston, then went directly to the Metropolitan Police Station. Hello, I wonder if you could help me. I'm looking for Sergeant Papish.
I'm Papish.
Oh, Johnny Dollar, Sergeant.
Oh. Thanks for coming down, Dollar. Have a chair.
Oh, thanks.
Your mink coat's in the crime lab. They're looking it over.
Uh-huh.
We still haven't found out much about the girl who was wearing it.
What's her name?
Just Jane Doe for now. We didn't have her print on file here, but we're waiting to hear from Washington now. She's been unconscious ever since we picked her up. Pretty bad shape.
Oh, what exactly happened?
I came in as a complaint about 3 this morning. A woman over on 57th Street telephoned about a disturbance. A prowl car went over to the address and found this girl lying in the entrance to the apartment house wearing the mink coat. She'd been shot twice.
Uh-huh.
No one in the apartment house seemed to know her or had ever seen her before. We asked about the neighborhood. No dice. But we did find out how she got there.
Huh?
The lady across the street said she saw a man drive up sometime after midnight and unload the girl from his car. He was able to give us a fair description of the car and the man. Yeah.
Thanks.
But nothing definite. No license number or anything like that. Could be any car and any man, from what she said. Got an APB out, of course.
Was there a purse or anything?
Nothing. The dress she was wearing came from a store downtown. Hundreds just like it. The coat was the only item that might have helped, and it turned up listed in the stolen property file.
How about jewelry?
Small diamond ring on her little finger. When I looked over the list of things taken in that Jacoby robbery, it doesn't fit any of those. Look at it if you want to.
I'll take your word for it.
I suppose the insurance company paid off the claim.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Well, at least we have the coat back for you. Maybe we'll get a line on the other things when this girl regains consciousness. If she does.
Pretty bad, is it?
Yeah. Nice-looking girl, too. Only about 25 or so. Excuse me.
Sure.
Robbery, Sergeant Papish. Oh, let me get it down here. 213 West. Right. Okay, see you there. Bye. Just got an answer from Washington.
They able to identify the girl?
Yeah, address and all. She had a postal savings once. Name's Eileen Madden.
You mind if I go with you?
Come on. Maybe you'll get back all of your loot.
I accompanied Sergeant Papish to the address for Eileen Madden. Turned out to be a fairly nice apartment in a fairly nice neighborhood. By the time we arrived there, a full crew of technicians were at work giving the place a complete check. Sergeant Papish introduced me to a tall, heavy-set man.
This is Mr. Dollar from the insurance company, Walt. Sergeant Walters.
Hi.
How are you, Sergeant?
Oh, fine. I'm afraid we haven't done any good for you so far. Haven't found anything here to go with that mink coat.
Oh. Have you talked to anybody around here yet?
Just getting started on it. The lady who lives across the hall might be able to help us.
Where is she?
In there. Her name's Ethel Stromberg. Mrs.
Okay.
I'll take it here.
Right. Are you Mrs. Stromberg?
Yes, I am.
I'm Sergeant Papish. This is Mr. Dollar.
How do you do?
How do you do?
How's poor Eileen?
Not very good, Mrs. Stromberg. She's still unconscious.
Oh, dear, that's terrible. Just a terrible thing. Where is she? I'd like to go see her if it's possible.
She's at the police emergency hospital right now, Mrs. Stromberg. I'll have them phone you when she can see people.
Well, thank you. What an awful thing. How did that happen? What's that all about?
Maybe you can tell us something about her, Mrs. Stromberg. Where she worked, how she lived, what people she knew.
Oh, dear.
How long have you known her?
Well, I moved in here about 5 months ago. I met her the very first day.
Mm-hmm. Nice girl?
Oh, yes, very nice girl. Quiet, she minded her own business.
Do you know where we can contact her family?
No, I can't help you there, Sergeant. I know they live somewhere in California, but that's about all. She talks about them now and then.
How about her friends here in town?
What about them?
Did she talk about any of her friends to you?
What do you mean?
Well, she's a pretty girl. Young. Boyfriends, maybe.
Yes, she did talk about them now and then. You suppose one of them had something to do?
Mrs. Stromberg, Eileen Madden was dumped from a convertible last night after she'd been shot. A witness described the car as possibly blue or black in color, white top, white sidewalls. She said it was a late model Cadillac or Buick. Do you know if any of Miss Madden's friends drove a car that comes near that description at all?
Why, yes. Yes, I saw him pick her up tonight. I was just coming home.
Saw who pick her up, Mrs. Stromberg?
A man she called Bill.
Bill who?
I really don't know his last name. She didn't introduce me to him. But she talks about him. He drove a black Cadillac.
Can you tell us what he looks like?
Well, he seemed very tall.
As tall as Sergeant Papish here?
So about your height, very nice looking. He seemed quite big. Husky, sort of. Very nicely dressed, too.
What color was his hair?
I don't know. He always wore hat. I think it was dark, though.
His eyes?
I don't know.
About how old would you say?
Oh, I'm no good at this, but I say between 30 and 35.
Seems to fit what we had from the witness.
Yeah.
This Bill, would you say he had money?
Oh, yes, I would say so. He drove that nice big convertible. He always dressed so nice. And he gave Eileen pretty nice things.
Do you know if he ever gave her any jewelry?
I don't know. I don't think so. Eileen usually run across the hall and show me when he sent her something nice. I don't remember her ever showing me any jewelry.
I just talked to the hospital.
How is she?
Just coming around. I think you better go over there and talk to her if you're gonna.
Is she bad?
I think she's dying, Mrs. Stromberg.
Think she'll make it?
Hard to say right now. Sometimes they rally. She must have been in their doorway a half hour or better before we got to her.
Mm-hmm.
She said anything, Doctor?
No. You might have to wait a little while for her to come around.
I see.
I'll tell you both. Ask what you have to know quick. 2 minutes is about all I can give you with it.
Sure, Doctor.
Oh, better put your cigarettes in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, miss. Okay, boy.
She conscious?
Yeah, she can hear you.
Are you Eileen Madden? Is Eileen Madden your name?
Yes.
You're seriously hurt, Miss Madden. Can you tell us how it happened? Miss Madden?
No.
Bill shot you?
Yes.
What's Bill's name? Where can we find him?
Doctor.
Watch it. Nurse, hand me that. Sorry, fella. There was nothing I could do.
John Lund, we bring you the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Eileen Madden died at 3:35 in the afternoon without giving us the full name of the man who shot her the night before. I stayed with Sergeant Papish and Sergeant Walters as they continued their investigation of her death and the appearance of the mink coat covered in policy number 27M55567, issued to Roland J. Jacoby, Rochester, New York. The apartment where she had lived yielded some information.
Here it is. Letters from Robert J. Madden in Riverside, California. Looks like her father.
Okay, we'd better notify him.
This might be the best lead.
What's that?
This picture. Found in one of her closets.
Let's see. Solid.
Oh, thanks. Love, Bill.
You loved her, all right.
Yeah. Anybody identified this yet?
And Mrs. Stromberg's supposed to be here right now. What time are you?
Oh, how fast?
She said she'd be here at 6.
Anything on the bullets?
They didn't check with anything in our lab. Ballistic says it was an Army 45. Bill 1911 model.
Pretty good gun for killing.
What gun is it?
Oh, I got the wrong room at first.
Oh, come in, Mrs. Stromberg. You remember Sergeant Papish and Mr. Dollar?
Yes. Do I have to answer more questions?
Not many more.
Oh, I'm just all worn out. I can't get over the terrible thing happening to Eileen. Did you get in touch with her family?
Business office is doing it right now.
Oh, dear, what a terrible, terrible thing.
Mrs. Stromberg, you ever seen this man before?
Oh, yes, that's it.
The man Eileen's been going with?
Yes.
The man who drives the black Cadillac convertible?
Yes, that's him. But did he do this terrible thing?
It looks that way, Mrs. Stromberg.
Oh, dear, dear.
Sergeant Papish. Yeah, right. Goodbye. Did Eileen Madden ever mention to you that she had been married?
Why, no. She never did. Was she?
In the state of New York in 1951. This found out from vitals.
Divorced?
Yeah. Her ex-husband's name is Bill. Bill Powers. Sergeant Papish, this is Mr. Dollar.
How do you do? What's the matter?
May we come inside, Mr. Powers?
Sure. Well, what's this all about?
Do you know a woman named Eileen Madden, Mr. Powers?
Yeah, sure. We were married once. Why? Eileen Madden was shot to death last night, Mr. Powers. Eileen? Yes. Are you sure? We checked her prints. Shot? Yes. What happened? How could a thing like that happen?
That's what we're trying to find out, Mr. Powers.
I can't believe it. Eileen dead. Have you seen her lately? Well, yeah, I saw her last week. Had a drink together. Are you sure it's Eileen?
We'd make sure before we came around with news like this. Mr. Dollar represents an insurance company, Mr. Powers. Miss Madden was wearing a stolen coat when we found her.
Stolen coat?
Yes, a stolen mink coat. Was she ever in trouble anywhere?
I don't care what she was wearing. Eileen never steal anything. She was a fine girl, a wonderful girl. I was a fool to ever let our marriage go on the rut.
Can you come with us, Mr. Powers?
Where?
We need a positive identification.
Sure. Sure, Sergeant. I'll be right with you.
Want to smoke?
Thanks.
Well, he isn't the bird in the picture.
No. Did you see the car in the driveway?
Yeah. 51 Caddy, black convertible.
On the way to the city morgue with the ex-husband of Eileen Madden, we tried to get more information from him regarding her activities up to the time of her death. But Powers seemed so distraught that he could only speak of their short marriage and the reason it had ended. It was an old and especially sad story of a man who couldn't provide well enough for a beautiful wife. However, once he'd seen her body at the morgue and identified it, he seemed to get better control of himself. We all walked across the street for coffee.
I hope you get whoever did this, Sergeant. I hope you get him fast.
We sure want to, Mr. Powers.
Why would anybody do that to Eileen? Why?
Maybe you can help us answer that.
Oh, you're just interested in that coat you say she was wearing. Well, mister, I don't believe she was wearing a stolen coat. What do you think of that?
I'm just looking for the facts, Mr. Powers. I'd like to prove what you just said as badly as you'd like to have it proved. But we have to start somewhere. You can understand that.
I suppose so.
You told us you saw her last week for a drink.
That's right.
Have you been seeing her right along?
Yeah, sure.
Did you know that she's been going with somebody else?
Sure.
And you know Bill?
Bill Chambers?
Yeah.
I don't know him, but she talked about him on the line. Is this Bill Chambers, Mr. Powers? Yeah, that's him. I thought you knew. You're sure this is him? I'm sure. This picture was in her place. I went there one day and saw it and asked her who he was. He told me all about him.
What did she tell you about him?
Why, she said she was going with him. She told me that he wanted to marry her. Said he had lots of money.
Did she tell you where he works?
No.
Or what kind of work he does?
No. You know where we can get in touch with him? No, I don't know that either. Say, do you think he might have done this to her?
We'd like to talk to him.
I know she's been going with him for a few months, what she told me.
And you've been seeing her the same time she was seeing Chambers?
Well, yeah, that's right. She didn't want to marry him. Me again.
You know what kind of a car Chambers drives?
Cadillac.
Thought you never met him.
Well, she told me about his car. It's another thing. I went out and bought one myself. I thought it might do me some good with it.
Mm-hmm. Were you at home last night?
Yeah.
Can you prove it?
Yeah. I was home. She was out getting killed.
The name William Chambers was checked through the New York police files. They listed 24 persons who more or less fit his general description. It took 2 days to locate and talk with all of them. Neither Mrs. Stromberg nor the witness who had seen the body dumped from the car could identify any of them. An all-points bulletin regarding the suspect and his car had been issued as soon as we learned his name. Same results. Nothing. On the third day, the pawn shop detail turned up 2 more items that had been taken in the Jacoby robbery.
There they are.
Huh. Watch and ring. Jacoby stuff?
Case numbers on the watch checkout. The ring's engraved.
Where'd they wind up?
Shop on 3rd Street. The proprietor said it was sold yesterday. Man who sold them signed the Bible, James Agenian.
How about his description?
5th Chambers down the line.
Well, at least he was still in town yesterday.
Yeah, but the stuff's been on the hot sheet for a long time. If he's had any experience at all, he knew he was taking a chance trying to unload it.
Probably trying to raise cash to get out of town.
That's what I was thinking. Gave him an address on Polk Street, a vacant lot.
If he keeps on trying to unload it, I'll have all the loot back.
If he keeps on trying, we'll keep on trying.
Well, I found his car.
Where?
Used car lot in the Bronx. He sold it at 10 o'clock this morning.
At the used car lot, we learned that a man answering the description of William Chambers had driven in that morning and offered a black 51 Cadillac convertible for sale. The used car lot manager had finally settled on a price and made out a check. He reported that the man had seemed extremely nervous and anxious to make a quick deal. The car was impounded and examined. A full set of fingerprints on the steering wheel and dashboard gave us a positive identification of William Chambers.
William Carlson, alias William Carls, William Charles, Walter Cameron, male, Caucasian, age 33, 178, 6'1". Let's see, 14 arrests, 2 convictions, both car theft.
Quite a lad.
Aren't they all? Doesn't look like a killer, though, does he?
I don't know. What's a killer supposed to look like? The search to locate William Carlson, alias William Chambers, extended to all parts of the city. The associates and relatives listed in his criminal file were contacted and questioned. All of them denied having any knowledge of his whereabouts. In the meantime, 2 more pieces of stolen property connected with the Jacoby theft were recovered by the pawn shop detail. Each of the pawn shop proprietors identified the mugshot of the wanted man. He used different names in each instance. The handwriting was the same. Each address had to be checked out. I went with Sergeant Papish to the one he had given on 78th Street. It was not a vacant lot.
Hello? Hello. We're looking for William Courtney.
You found him?
Huh?
Cops?
Yeah.
Come on in.
Hold still.
I'm clean. Checked me through the Bible yesterday?
Yeah. Your name's Carlson, isn't it? William Carlson?
Yep. We've been looking a long time for you. I know. Yesterday I decided I'd let you find me. I get my right address.
You want to get your hat?
Sure. Look, I didn't mean to kill Eileen. I didn't mean to at all. I want you to know that.
We'll talk about it downtown.
No, we won't. I'm not talking to anybody downtown. I'm talking to you two right now, and that's it. You better listen.
Okay.
I've been doing pretty good with these house jobs. Real good. Enough to find myself a nice car, get some clothes, get around a little bit. I work all alone. I met her. I liked her. I wanted to marry her. I did. I really did. We went out the other night, and I gave her the mink coat for a present. I thought that'd cinch it. She didn't want to take it. She told me she was going to marry some guy she'd been married to before. I thought I'd have it.
That's all?
That's all. That's it, mister. I could have run. Sold my car. Getting rid of a lot of odds and ends I have around. I decided not to, after all. I don't want to run.
Okay, let's get with it.
I remember, I let you get me. I wrote my address right down where I knew you'd check it out.
Okay.
And there's no more talking. You two got it all straight. What's the matter with you, anyway? You got it all? I mean, about everything? Yeah, I've got it. Okay. Hey, wait a minute. You guys are too late. I took it when I heard you knock on the door.
Where's the phone?
Too late, I tell you. It's in my stomach now. Too late.
Not for me, brother. I handle plenty of babies, just like you.
Too late.
Grab him, Nip.
I got it.
Go. Here we go. Shut up. You're going to stand trial, baby.
Sergeant Papish had handled attempted suicides. A lot of them. And in the 5 minutes before the arrival of the emergency ambulance, he managed to force William Carlson to take an antidote that saved his life. Of the Jacoby theft items were found in and around the apartment of the suspect, along with other stolen property listed with the New York police. All of the articles on the enclosed list have been impounded and will be available following the trial of William Carlson. Expense account item 3, hotel and board while in New York, $88.65. Item 4, same as item 2, transportation back to Hartford. Expense account total, $155.42. Remarks? Please file a copy of the above report for the information of William Powers in regard to his ex-wife, Eileen Madden. I think this is what he wanted. Well, that's it. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
You know, many great men have attained the highest office in our land, the presidency of the United States. Can you guess the name of this man? In 1770, as one of the leading lawyers in Massachusetts, he defended the British soldiers who fired on civilians during the so-called Boston Massacre. His 4 years as president were perhaps the stormiest in our history, as he fought to keep America out of a war with France. But an official war against France brought George Washington out of retirement as commander of the army and gave birth to the phrase, millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute. If you don't have his name by now, here are 2 more clues. During his presidency, Washington became the national capital, and the 11th Amendment was adopted. Who was he? John Adams, second President of the United States. His life is part of your American heritage.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars John Lund in the title role and was written by E. Jack Newman with music by Eddie Dunstetter. Featured in tonight's cast were Virginia Gregg, John McIntyre, Jim Nusser, Jeanette Nolan, Victor Perrin, and Bill Johnstone.
Welcome back. Well, a couple of things. It was kind of a nice twist to have it where the boyfriend and the ex-husband had the same first name. And if it's something like Bill, that's pretty believable. If it's, Aloysius or Jean-Claude, maybe a little less so. But that was a nice twist because oftentimes they will just get the first name, in a lot of productions. And that, with a name like Bill, definitely possible to make mistakes. I also have to note kind of the verbal tick. This is something that E. Jack Newman did a lot as a writer. And those of you who are familiar with Jeff Regan, you remember, of course, that in his show, when E. Jack Newman wrote the episodes of Jeff Regan, people were always calling Regan Pilgrim. He kind of mixed it up a little, I think became better at it. And this verbal tick of having the police officer call people baby. It would actually, in one of the 5-part serials, and I'm absolutely certain pretty much that no 5-part serial was made based on this particular episode. In the 5-part serial, they have one actor who does such a good job with that baby, really kind of enriches the character the way it was done there. All right. Well, also, I do want to let you know, those of you who have the app and the premium site, we have a John Lund extra for you. I think you will enjoy it. It's an episode of Cavalcade of America, and that is your app extra. Listener comments and feedback. We actually begin. Now we've got a voicemail here. Let's go ahead and we'll take a listen to it.
Yeah, just tell you, I got your app on my iPhone. Man, I love it. I love it. All right. Talk to you guys later. Have a good day. Okay, bye.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening out there. And then we also received this from Twitter at Radio Detectives. D. Cody writes regarding regarding the Night Beat special we played. I learned today that if you're a woman dating a down-and-out boxer, never laugh at him. Well, I think that it really was kind of this, it was a very complex psychological piece. Perhaps that may sum it up in one way, but she was kind of a cruel person, and, it was just unnecessary cruelty that I think led to her downfall. Even among this guy who really, he was kind of gone. But he also comments, hey, Adam, did they ever make a Bulldog Drummond radio show? They did. I listened to it, did not really find it worthwhile, and it's one of the few detective shows. I've got pretty broad taste, but it's one I just don't think's good enough to do. So, there was a Bulldog Drummond radio program, but really flat. And so that's one that's on my won't do list, but it's out there. I think you can find some copies on archive.org. All right. Well, that will actually do it for us for today. We will be back, on Monday, with, Barrie Craig. Also on Sunday, we have our video theater episode. This is the last of the Mr. Wong movies. This one is different because it's got a new actor in the lead role. It's got Kay Luke. This is kind of interesting to note because, you have these Oriental detectives, but most were not played by Orientals. So this was a very rare case where that happened. I think the movie was kind of underrated. He did a good job in it. He didn't quite have the presence of Boris Karloff, but he had some youth working for him, and just some great lines, a little bit more action. Perhaps in this role, he's a bit more Mr. Moto than Charlie Chan. And so that kind of spices up the movie, makes it interesting. The one thing that's kind of interesting for a reboot is they actually have the same actor playing the police captain as played in the Boris Karloff Mr. Wong movies. So I think this is going to be pretty fun. Look for that last Mr. Wong movie coming up this Sunday. All right, well, that's seriously all. Comments, box13, greatdetectives.net, Twitter at Radio Detectives, and Facebook.com/Radio Detectives. But from Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.